Hello, everybody. It is Chris Schmidt with Rocket Lasso, and welcome to Rocket Lasso Live, a live show that we do every single Wednesday. I don't know about every single Wednesday, but for season one, we're going to keep on going, see how long the season ends up being. It's a 2 hour live stream where I take your motion graphics and Cinema 4D questions, and we try and just figure out the answers. Oftentimes, the chat has an answer where we can jump in and do that. The focus today is going to be rapid fire answers. So we're going to be trying to get through a whole bunch of questions, have a lot of people be able to squeeze their question in. And that should be really good. I'm excited. I don't see any reason to delay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the screen here. I'll be nice and tiny in the corner. Do you guys like it being tiny in the corner, or should I just disappear entirely? Because I often will start gesturing, but then I don't know if that helps or not. So yeah, something to figure out. But we got lots of links going already. Thank you, everybody, for putting the links in there. Everybody already knows that links are supposed to make sure that I can see the artist or the studio who made it. Otherwise, we can't tackle. And I randomly jump around and grab different links, so I don't go in any particular order. So just don't spam the question, but feel free to repeat it if I've kind of moved past it. Glandflave, what do you got? You got a link to Instagram, and let's see, popped open in the wrong window. I'll drag it over here, and let's see what we got. Well, first, it's another Oscar Pettersson one. We did one of his last week. I don't want to just keep repeating off of one person. Oh, another really cool rolling one. There's a good chance that the answer to this is just going to be the Roll It plugin. But it's pretty cool. Because we did one of his last week, I don't want to spend any time on repeating on somebody else's. I don't want to keep on focusing on one artist. But once again, very cool and really fun, unique movement. I would be curious if he has a specific way. Let's see if he says anything. Loop, GIF, creative, seamless. He's not calling out anything specifically. At the same time, it's entirely possible you could just actually do that in Dynamics and just have it roll forward, and that might actually do it by itself. Actually, you know what? I know I just said we weren't going to do anything on this one, but let's just go and try and make a unique shape, because I think we can do this really quick, so it could be really fun. Let's make a unique, weird shape, and then let's see if we can get Dynamics to roll down on it. Now, he had a couple of circles in one shape, but let's go ahead and we'll do some circles, but we'll do them in like a pyramid type layout. So I'm going to grab this, and we want this to run really quick. So I'm going to hit NB, so I can see the polygons here. Let's go ahead and lower these down. Something like that would probably be good. I'm going to make it a lot thinner. And actually, keeping the ring segments at about this amount, I think, is probably pretty good. So let's see, what's a good layout to have this shape? And we need something that could still roll. So that could be where a little bit of the challenge comes in here. But my instinct here would be to make something like a cloner, drop it in there, and now we can make something of a unique shape. So I would want to do like a radial. Like we might be able to do something like this, which actually is kind of interesting already. So do something funky like this and just see what it does. So let's see, we'll do 4 segments. No, 3. Like 3 would be interesting, but I'm not sure if that would even have the ability to roll. Although actually looking at it, I think it might. So you can see we get this unique, weird shape. I think there's enough. No, that's actually not entirely true. I'm not sure there's enough curvature here, because if it falls on this flat side, I don't know if it could roll. It might hit this like flat part. So I'd be slightly concerned if this can actually roll, but it's going to be really quick to do this. So let's go ahead and create a connect, throw into a connect so it's treating as one object, right click, Cinema 4D, simulation, or rigid body tag. Let's make a floor. I'm going to move the floor down, and all we're going to do to try and get these rolling is take this floor, hit R for rotate, hold down shift, and let's do a 10-degree roll, so nothing too crazy. And on the dynamics tag on our unique shape, why don't we just go ahead and tell it on the collision tab, the shape, not to be automatic, but to be a moving mesh. And that should be all we need to do here. Let's go ahead and throw on a color here so we can actually see it pop out from the background a little bit. And hit NB, and why don't we even turn on SSAO so we can see some shadow. Let's hit play. Oop, I guess we should put a dynamics tag on the floor. Copy the one that we currently have onto that, should work fine. Hit play. We're going to need more frames, 999, because it's quick to type in. Scroll out a little bit, hit play. Let's see what we get. There's a rolling flop, and then it's going to go. It's getting a little clunky over there, so that's what I was a little bit worried about. But why don't we go ahead, and because we made a very clean rig here, let's go ahead and add a couple extra segments on here. So now look at this very unique one. But now I think this is guaranteed to pretty much roll like a sphere, although there might be a little bit of uniqueness in the way it rolls. We're sliding. Do you see how we're sliding down the floor, which is interesting? Let's go ahead and grab both of our dynamics tags. I'm going to get rid of all of the bounce, and let's give it 99% friction. So that should really force it to be rolling. Now there might be a little bit of a lump there, but you can see that we are now rolling. Now this is perhaps a little less interesting because it's just a sphere. So it's pretty much just going to roll like a sphere. Trying to think of any kind of unique shape that we could put in here that would really show off something weird and unique. Because, you know, I can do that, but that's just a sphere. We could push these out, but I don't think that would roll very well. So it's kind of about finding a combination where we think they would roll. Actually, if we sharpen these up like this, we might get some more unique rolling because it might want to tilt off to one side. So if we hit play on that one, I think it would roll and then possibly hit there. But then here I would kind of hope it would tip over, although we're getting some reasonable angle on it. You know what I'm actually going to do? Let's go ahead and turn it a little bit just to force it to be in a slightly not perfectly forward position. And hit play. And so just enough energy to roll. And my hope would be to tilt over, but it already has enough acceleration. Now the next quick step I would do, and we're going to move on real quick here, is put on perhaps some angular or linear dampening to start sucking the energy out from the rotation. These small numbers won't do much, but it would hopefully stop us from accelerating too quickly. So as long as we have enough to get over this initial bump, this will be constantly sucking a little bit of energy out. And then actually, I just thought of something good. If we increase the gravity, so if I got rid of the linear or the angular dampening, hit Command or Control D, go to Dynamics. Let's go ahead and crank up our gravity to be twice as strong. Really shouldn't change much, but it should make it a lot more likely to tilt on its side when we get a particular angle. Although I guess it's pulling everything down more as well. So does that not really change the equation? I'm not sure. I'm going to angle it less because we've got 5 times as much gravity, which is enough to stop that from wanting to tilt. So I guess maybe we would want to do, whoop, too much. Whee! It's out of here. Okay, hit play. Tilt just enough. No, oh, you know what? We're having a lot of trouble getting this one to go. I don't want to repeat what he did in that one, but I would think that if we did just set this to linear and then tell every other ring to rotate 90 degrees, and then we separate them out enough, then we should start getting, I guess even his was just a single offset. So we would actually offset in this direction and none here. So if you get this kind of shape is more what he had. And I'm just curious if dynamics would, okay, the second one makes that a loop. So maybe it can just be 2. Maybe there's something unique about that shape that, yeah, well, I didn't want to just make the one he did and try to find another shape, but it turns out that the unique shape of this is pretty important. And so if we were to just like drain enough energy out from here, I would hope that we could keep it moving at a slightly more constant rate. Yeah, you see it's not going crazy here. So I feel like if you just kind of baked this, you could probably get a perfect loop out of it. But I don't even know if you'd need a perfect loop. Like just let it do one motion. So that one is doing its thing well because you get 2 round shapes. We could probably figure out another cool, unique shape, but that's that one. Let's just give this a, I'm going to hit undo a few times and get the funky start here. I'm going to save this version of the file. Let's go ahead and jump in episode 6. Scene files. Number 1. Rolling loop, I guess. And then let's jump on in and grab another question. So let's see. Jumping on over. I'm going to scroll up to get the questions again from the previous section. Cub, let's see what you got. Boom. Ooh, a pixely cactus from John. Let's see what we got here. Oh, look at those morphs. Intentionally rendered at incredibly low resolution with no anti-aliasing. Also fun. Now, okay, yeah, and even here you can see he made 2 unique shapes and they're morphing between each other. It's really fun. Now, let's see. There's a couple different aspects here. You just linked directly to it, but not the specific effect you're interested in. So we can talk about a couple of the elements here, but I want to make sure things are pretty different. And I also, really quickly, am going to try and track down a scene file for you to show you, let's see. Oh, there, no, not NAB. Presentations, Us by Night. And I did a presentation with some morphing fruit. And I want to see if I can find it, because that'd be a fun one to share. Pixel rain driving tutorials. I did not name these. the most clear. Lost by night. Looks like I might clean that up a little bit. All right, I can't think of any way around this to find it because I just named these in a way for a presentation. So if you'll allow me, I'm just going to open up the entire files of the presentation, and we will and let's see, a little bit older there, MoSpline stuff, MoSpline mesher, not the MoSpline, nope. Targeting, nope. Vertex Maps, nope. Weird blobs, nope. Nope. Unless I just passed it with that weird circle. No. The pipe one's fun. Weird bottle, fracturing that, cool, unique shapes. Some fields, that one is fun. Multi-instancing, look at this guy. Hello, everybody. Volume modeling, definitely not a volume modeling one. Cool, funky swirls. The candle one was really fun. I might need to extract that and do something unique with it. Oh, well, I just blasted through all those and it didn't jump out at me. Search presentations for the word fruit. Because I made a bunch of... Ooh, there's maybe something. Oh, I think I did blast past it. Okay, so here is... okay, especially with us trying to blast through these. You know what? I'm going to start this one again proper. So we're going to go... Let's see, what was the question? Just in case we clip this out. So, what do we got here? Cube linked us over to Instagram, and that is bringing us over to John's render here. And we've got a really cool pixelated, low poly, very clean looping animation of this cactus. So we're going to see if we can emulate a couple of the effects here. Now, it's going to take a while to make this morphing effect, but I can go and explain it really quickly via a file I created a little while ago that I never really got a chance to show off. So what I've got here is I created a sphere shape from a cube a while ago. And the sphere shape, let me go ahead and show these. Yeah, sphere shape from a cube. So we have the very, very clean polygons here. And actually, it probably didn't start out as a sphere. It probably started out as something a little bit more shaped. But using this piece of geometry, I made this banana. And I think it might even start with like a stem. So the stem was there and I made sure to morph it back in. And all I did was use like the normal, not modeling tools, but like sculpting type of things, move around circles. And I modeled using the same mesh, I made this banana. And then using the same mesh again, I made this pear. And using that same model again, I made this apple. So the point count didn't change. No new cuts, no new slices, didn't remove anything, didn't weld anything. It's all the exact same mesh. And then based on that, I probably would have taken it and gone and made a, like I would have made the apple first and then made a, where is it? A spherify, dropped this into the spherify. And if we put that into here, you can see I can start morphing that really cleanly into this. Actually, you can see it right there. Like by doing that, I pretty much just made that perfect sphere from the apple. And I would have just done a little bit clean up here. Because you could even say, right now, I could right click on this and say current state to object and then get rid of that. So I still have my apple. But you can now see I've got this made editable sphere, but the points haven't changed. So this would be a valid thing to continue modeling from. And even just grabbing like this one little middle polygon, I get grow, and hit MG, and then smooth. I'm using the iron tool to smooth those out, and you can see kind of the way that is smoothing out. There is a diminishing returns on that a little bit, but you can see that's actually doing a pretty good job of eventually, as I'm doing it again and again and again, I'm hitting again. You see, eventually, it actually did a pretty good job of smoothing the whole thing out. And then what I'd probably do is hit UK to shrink it, T for scale. Don't scale on Y. Scale it, shrink it, scale it, shrink it, scale it, shrink it, scale it, shrink it. And now you can see how I'm really quickly able to morph that into something that's a little bit more usable. And now maybe if I did one more MG for iron. Okay, not even too far, just a little bit of smoothing there. And then I would run the spherify on it again just to make those points go right on the surface. And boom, I would have created my original sphere shape. And it's always easiest to make a sphere. You can make that easy from that deformer. So having done that, we've now got all of these different shapes for reference. So all I did was take essentially a copy of the sphere, renamed it fruit. And then I made a morph tag, and then in the morph tag, I dragged the banana in. and then I dragged the pear in, I dragged the apple in. So now that all that's been done, I can go ahead and be viewing just this final fruit here. And let's unhide it and make sure that none of the other ones are showing. And now I can grab these sliders here and I can morph it between them. So I can say a banana, a pear, an apple. And then, of course, we could keyframe all those back, or these could go away, and then that one could keyframe down. So we can morph in between those. So that is the basic idea of being able to do that kind of thing. So why don't we go ahead and do a really quick animation here. So we're going to start out, let's start out with a banana. And then, of course, this would be subdivision surfaced. So we got our banana, and then I'm going to record. Oops, sorry, misclick. Let's go ahead and record the banana at this time, and then let's go forward 20 frames, and then have the pear come in. I guess the pear should have been 0 at the beginning, so let's record that one. So now we can jump forward to the pear time, and at the pear time, that's when the apple should start, and we'll give it another 20 frames, and then the apple will come in, record that, and then it's going to start moving downward at the 60 frame mark. But at 50, I'm going to have these two go down to 0, so those can both get recorded. And now when we go up to 60, the other one should be ahead. So when it morphs, it should go back to a sphere shape. So hopefully we just got, actually it's not supposed to go to a sphere, it's supposed to go to a banana. But yeah, we didn't ever start at the sphere. So at the beginning, I didn't want the banana to go to 0, I want it to stay at 100. So we got banana, pear, apple, banana. Now it looks like I needed to have the apple wants to morph right away. So this in-between state, I'm actually going to move that really quickly in. So it doesn't even have a chance to do that. And it's going to go right from an apple back to a banana. So you can see we get that nice, really quick transition. So that's the entire animation. It's only 60 frames long. If we wanted to make it looping, I'd actually make it 59 frames long. And now if I hit play, it's going to be a perfect looping animation again and again and again forever. So let's see if we can kind of get that little bit of an 8-bit thing going. I'm not going to worry about the colors right now. You could just keyframe the color to be matching as we went. I mean, I guess we could. It's going to take seconds. Let's go ahead and throw on a color here. We're only going to worry about a single color. So let's go ahead and make it yellow. And slightly warm yellow. This looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and keyframe that color at this time. And we're going to fast forward to the end time and actually go one more forward at 60 and keyframe that again because we're back to the banana. Although we're not allowed to keyframe something that's not exposed, so we have to go one. Now I can keyframe it. So now we know if we jump to 20 frames, we get the pear. So let's just make it a green pear. Something like that. Maybe a little darker. There we go. That's that color. And let's jump over to 40 frames when we're at an apple. Of course, we'll just go nice red here. We'll make it nice and crisp. Pretty red. Yeah, we'll just go cartoony with it. So those are all morphing. And now we can see that we got the color changing as well. So nice and straightforward there. Let's go ahead and grab this and see if we can get a little bit pixely. I'm going to go ahead and save this into our sharing folder. You get these files if you are subscribed on Patreon. Let's go ahead to episode 6, scene files, and we'll just call this number 2, and we'll call it fruit morph. And now I'm really curious in this pixel style. So we're going to use a standard renderer, and we're going to make our resolution pretty dang small. So let's go ahead and make it square. So I'm just going to say, I don't even know what we want. Let's say 100 by 100. So this is also going to render really quick, so that's another advantage here. So we could render like that out to the animation. I'm going to say render one less frame. But we also want to go to our anti-aliasing because right now if I were to render, and I guess we want to make sure that these ones are not rendering. That's my fault. Okay, so when it's rendering, even if let's go ahead and send this to the picture viewers because it's going to go so fast. We can scroll up here. But you can see it's anti-aliasing. Look how quick that renders is ridiculous. But you can see that it's anti-aliasing. So you can see that it's got clean pixels on the edge. We don't want that. So I'm actually going to say anti-aliasing none. So hopefully it's not trying to clean that up at all. So let's go ahead and render that again and see what we get. And there we go. Now, even though we went with none, I still feel like we're getting a little bit of a transition there. Actually, I'm not sure. You see it's really sharp on the edge. So I guess that's probably just the way it's being colored on the edge. So that's actually working pretty well. So we get this nice pixely kind of look going. We could probably put in some sort of additional effect. We can make it a little bit cartoonier even in the viewport, or we might be able to do some sort of cartoony type shading which might help. I don't want to spend too long here. We're already using the color channel here. So what I might do would be, I'm not even going to look at the reference anymore because I don't want it to be exact on there. But let's go ahead and put a compositing tag. And on the compositing tag, I'm going to tell it to be compositing background, which is going to make it completely flat. But why don't we go ahead in our render settings and turn on maybe some ambient occlusion. And the ambient occlusion, why don't we go ahead and twirl down our gradient, and I'm going to select all of these. And actually, let's make a couple segments here. I'm going to grab that, and then that, and then that. Honestly, that's probably too many. I'm going to get rid of that one, get rid of that one. Yeah, we'll do that. And let's go ahead and select all of these. Hold down Shift and grab all of them, and say step. So you see we're stepping between them. And of course, we need to pull this over so we actually get the white one. And a little bit. Get the white one, deselect them all, hold down Shift, and just distribute them a little bit better. Just eyeball that. But now, even our ambient occlusion should hopefully have some kind of, what do you want? Like a stepped look. So I'm just curious what that looks like. It should, once again, render incredibly fast. So, and it's only going to be showing up at the top here. So yeah, just a little bit of a hint of some shadow. But now in our material, what I would kind of like to do is go into maybe our luminance channel. And I'm going to feed in, this kind of an old school technique, is I'm going to go into effects and make something like a Lumis shader. So what we're doing is essentially piping in a specular type of shader into the luminance channel. I'm going to say no shading, and I don't want specular 2 or 3. I just want them on this one. So what we do is go into this one, and we've got our different controls here. So let's see, I haven't used this one in a while, but we can go and crank up our intensity. So that one's really bright. We've got a size here, so you can see how bright that gets. It's kind of behaving a little oddly in this physically based window. I don't know if we can change that here. Project settings. Yeah, interesting. But they changed. This didn't used to show the reflectance workflow, but now in R20 it does. So it makes this one look a little bit different. But we could probably go and crank up the contrast here. And yeah, now you can see that we've kind of just by having a full contrast of 100, there's no gradient between it. So we just have this bright highlight going on there. So if we were to make a light, and let's scoot the light. I'm going to keep it real simple. Let's just scoot this forward. Let's just hit render. And there you go. Just boom, one big bright highlight. I could go and maybe pull a little further, maybe make the highlight a little bit longer. Cool. Undo the view, and let's go ahead and render again. There we go. Now we got this. Oh, look at that. That is looking pretty cool, actually. So now we've got these tiny little kind of GIF-like animation, and there's no transition between those colors. And then I think the final idea would be you could take this and then blow it up, you know, go into something and make the final output here bigger, or even something like this. If I was just to screen capture this as it's playing, and then you make your final output much bigger than the original small version. And I do think a little bit of shading on here would go a long way. Even that, I mean, just because we're having a little fun shading, and then we jump to the next question. But we're already controlling the color here, but we could actually throw that entire Lumis shader in here as well. I'm going to save it here because it's really where we're stopping. But just as an example, I'm going to get rid of the highlight, and it won't be changing color. But if I put the same type of Lumis shader here, and we just let the shading fall through, we're in the color channel, and I could not worry about any of these, actually. We'll just put that entire Lumis into a, what is it, the posterizer. Where does that hide these days? Posterizer. There we go. So now you can see it's only going to do a certain number of levels there, and that's in the color channel, which should be flattening everything. I'm going to temporarily yank the selection tag off there, and let's just see what it does in the viewport. So yeah, then now you can see how it's transitioning from one color to the next to the next. So in the posterizer, we could make sure that we do no transition. Let's do one less level. And of course, this entire shader, we could go in and change things like based on the shader, like give it an illumination of 100. And if we're changing the color, this could just multiply on, actually, that's what we could do is multiply that based on our color, and we might be able to pull back our selection tag. Yeah, so you can see that we are getting some of the color and highlights in on top of it, and then we could just make sure that it never gets to black. So we can lighten that up a little bit, and it does get to black here because it's being colored by the light, but we could put some additional illumination in other places. perhaps. So we could pull this one back. Whoa there. Pull that one. I don't know, it's snapping all crazy like that. But yeah, we could do some additional lighting, or you put a little bit of a luminance in here. Clear that out and do like a little bit of yellow, morph the same color. I don't know, there's a million ways to get a little bit of the color in there so it doesn't get flat. And then you could get this additional kind of lighting effect going, so you have more detail, but it's still flat. And then once you go and you do the pixelated version of it, the luminant yellow is going to be weird. But as soon as we do this, you can see that we're getting some shading in there, but we still get the pixel effect. So all that's straight out of Cinema, and I think it's working pretty good. I do like the shading, but just kind of stylistically, I think I liked it a little bit flatter here. Like one layer of shadow might be kind of fun. But that's pretty cool. I like that. And it's shocking how fast that renders. I'm going to go File, Revert to Saved. And let's just see how quick this renders. I'm going to say Render and go. And doop, 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 done. Like all that's rendered. So pretty fun there. Okay. So let's jump back into the chat and find another question. Thanks for that one. That was fun. I'm scrolling to the bottom to see if there's any new questions. Looks like some people are chatting amongst themselves, so I'm not sure which are for me. Ralph says, question, how do you make a smooth tube with an inserted clip without messing up the smoothness like the button on a Wacom? How do you make a smooth tube with an inserted clip without messing up the smoothness like the button on a Wacom? Now, what I'm assuming you're talking about, let's go and jump onto the full camera here. So I've got my Wacom pen right here. And let's see if it's going to, I can't bring it into focus here because it's going to go way out of focus. So I got to pull it way back here. But you can see where we have a button and it's transitioning in. And there's kind of a bit of smoothness on it. This is actually an excellent question. And stylistically, it's something I really love doing in modeling. I think it's just kind of a cool style. So let's jump into Cinema over here and look at it real quick. So we're not going to go too fancy on the actual button here, or the overall pen. But if we're going to make a cylinder shape and give ourselves a couple of subdivisions, and also let's keep it pretty low poly because you can just keep everything a lot cleaner doing that kind of thing. So let's go ahead and make this taller. Let's say 400. Couple extra height segments. There we go. So now we got something to work with right there. I like that. So let's go ahead and make this editable. And if we were to put this in subdivision surface, you see it's going to smooth out the entire thing. We should probably weld the caps, select all the points, optimize. Those are welded. So now you can see we got a nice smooth overall shape. So if you wanted to model in something like the Wacom pen button, let's go ahead and say that this is where the button is supposed to exist. I'd kind of like to do it on the orientation there. It's actually these. So let's say that's where the button should be. So I think that we can maintain the smoothness just by making sure that we maintain the integrity of kind of the polygons as they exist here. So we hit D for extrude and just extrude in. And you can see where it's going to kind of get this sharper curvature going along it. So you can see where we are, it is sort of messing that up. And now we could, if we smooth this out more, you see we are still going to end up with a pretty smooth final mesh, but we can start pushing this a lot further by adding additional cuts in certain places so they can transition better. The reason the smoothness from this side over here to that top side, why they're different, is because the distance that this is smoothing from there to there is a lot smaller than the distance from here to here. So if we were to do a couple cuts, let's hit edge mode, M or UB to do a ring selection. I'm going to do a ring selection there and a ring selection here. And now hit MF, which is the edge cut mode. I'm just going to do a single cut, and let's make sure we turn off Ngon. So now you can see we've got cuts on there. Now that we've done that, now just visually, almost coincidentally, they're a lot closer already, but I guess what I would do is hit UL for a loop selection, grab that, T for scale. Let's scale those in a little bit closer to each other. So now the distance from here to here is about the same as we just put in from here to here. So with any luck, that is now the curvature on the top is very similar to the curvature on the sides. So right there, that should be helping quite a bit. I am noticing that the way they extruded inward here is a little weird. I don't know why it kind of went clunky there. I don't have a great way of fixing that, except if it was in the moment when we saw it. I mean, we could fix this. Okay, here's a good way of fixing it, actually, because we're just doing rapid fire here. Right now, let's just assume, well, here is the proper height. So I'm going to copy that as my Y height. I'm going to grab this point, and I'm going to snap it to this one. So Shift S is the turning on snapping. So if I move this, we should snap to that point. Now it's not going to weld it, but now that is exactly in line with that point below. And now if I paste back in my Y position, it is back in line and it's a perfectly straight line up and down. Just a way of cleaning up that weird extrude we got. I don't entirely trust the edges on that extrusion, but let's just carry on. Now, if we wanted to sharpen this up even further, that's working well. We got a couple options. First of all, let's make a loop selection around, let's see if it'll let me do one. Yeah, there. You just have to find the right spot to actually do the loop. So you can see right there, the curvature is all working pretty well, but there is something called, let's see if we get when we right click. No. It's actually a tool that is a little bit hidden. It's a little bit of a pain to find. Commands, maybe? I am looking for there it is. Under Mesh Transform Tools, there is Weight Subdivision Surface. The shortcut is MR. As we were talking last week, if you want to learn a shortcut, you have to just force yourself to do it. So instead of clicking the button, I'm going to hit MR, and I start building up the muscle memory of where that is. But anyway, I can now I can just click and start dragging on the screen, and you can see we can transition into a hard edge on that. So you can see, boom, those are now a lot harder edge there, and it looks like it's doing a pretty dang good job of maintaining that curvature. So if we were to zoom out here, look at that beautiful hard edge where we're transitioning one shape into the other, and that is looking great. I'm going to undo actually. Let's also do a loop selection on that one and hit MR, and we can sharpen both of those up. And now look at this beautiful shape that we just got out of that. It's almost like we disconnected them. But having done that, we can hit undo. And let's bevel those again, MR, or not bevel, but let's weight the subdivision surface. But this time, why don't we just weight it not quite all the way? So I'm going to pull it in, but not quite all the way. We'll leave it a little bit smooth there. So now, I mean, the subdivision surface isn't giving us quite enough subdivisions for this to look great. But you can see how we're getting a sharper curve, but it still turns. Now, let's get rid of this tag and go back to just being smooth. Let's say we want to do it manually without the subdivision curve. Something we can do is hit UB, and I'm going to grab all these inner ring selections. You can see I've got that entire loop of them traveling around there. And now I'm going to hit MF to do a cut in there. So I can click like that, and you can see I've got that cut. But let's see what that is actually doing. I'm going to hit undo, and let's subdivision surface. And now let's hit apply. And the instant I do that, it just made it significantly sharper. That whole section is a sharper curve based on the way we subdivided. As an alternative, what I might do is hit MF and do additional subdivisions. So I might say, let's subdivide 3 times. And I can see that made it quite sharp, but it did create some redundant polygons. So I would dissolve some of these other ones. I just did that to get an even subdivision of 1, 2, 3 cuts. You can see 1, 2, 3. So I could do a loop selection and grab that one, and another loop selection, UL, grab that one. Let's say the back part's still supposed to be smooth. Do that, and I can just right click and dissolve, which the shortcut now is MN. There didn't used to be a shortcut, but that will get rid of the points as well. And now you can see that the front edge is going to be significantly sharper, nice and sharp up front, but the back still has a really smooth transition. So a lot of this just turns into stylistically how you want those to behave, and you can dramatically change the way those look. And even here, and we'll end it here, is if we were trying to also model the button a little bit, we could just grab these polygons in the back. I'm going to hit UP to split those off and hit delete on this object. So now you see this is a separate little extrusion I've got here, a separate couple of polygons by themselves. I can just hit the letter D for extrude, and we can extrude that out, and now you see we can pull a button back in here. And if we were inclined, we hit D again and get a second extrusion. You can see that one becomes sharper based on the very nature of what we just pulled out. And, if you wanted the clean curvature on the sides again, we could grab these 3 points here, maybe grab those 3 points there, pull those more forward. And you can see we can start, I got to turn off snapping, Shift S. We can pull these and sharpen those up a little, and you can start getting those button shapes, or T for scale, and pull them down. And you can just see where you could start being able to pull this in. You see actually it's bulging out a little bit here. It might be the extrude that did that. Actually, I almost guarantee that there's some extrudy weirdness. Yeah, these extrudes are not lining up the way I want them to. Probably I've chopped it in half and done some sort of symmetry. I'm going to ignore that. Oh man, what did that do? Yeah, this extrude was way off, but I'm just going to eyeball it and slide that back. Or I might have accidentally grabbed that point, to tell you the truth, so that might not be the extrude's fault. Even though it did do weirdness on the inside. But yeah, even here I would probably grab these polygons here and go T for scale and scale those in a little bit. And I even hold down Shift and convert my polygon selection to the current point selection, and then deselect those middle ones. Hold down Control, which will deselect them, T for scale. Scale that in a little tighter. And yeah, and once again, like tiny extrudes are what's going to sharpen this up for you. So I do another I for inner extrude, and in pink, you see instantly that made that very sharp. And look at that beautiful curve we're getting off of that. Like that just, I want to click that right now. Like that's just begging to be clicked. So yeah, a bunch of different ways of transitioning this. And even, you know, once again, stylistically, if we were to grab this top one, if we pull down this subdivision here, like maybe this loop, let's erase out this loop. So MN was dissolve. And now you'll see that there's more of a curve for that one to transition down and out. We could even grab the next loop here and pull it down further. And as I do, you're going to see that this is stretching, which is making that a smoother transition. So if you want, I'm going to undo because I liked it a little bit better, sharper there. But stylistically, it's pretty straightforward to go and do those kind of modifications. You know, grabbing this inner one here, we could grab those and pull those further back, and that's going to introduce a lot more curvature. Actually, that one's doing the most difference here. Pull that in, more curvature, pull it out. Now you can see that that is a smoother curve down there, and there's a nice sharp one up there. So the closer you pinch those lines together, the sharper that edge will ultimately be. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that one. Let's go ahead and give this one a quick save, and we'll just call this one number 3. Post more questions in there if you want me to get to it. If it was already up on top, feel free to post it again at the bottom. Pen button. All right, cool. That was a fun one. I like these little modeling challenges. Wacom pen. Hopefully that answered what you're asking, Ralph. Let's see. Thanks for more links, everybody. What do we got? What do we got? Who else we got hanging out here? Let me see. Jump over here. So we got Lasered, Paul, MW. What's going on? Motion Process. Welcome, welcome. Oliver. Who else is hanging out here? Bee Heaven or a Bee Havana. Picaro. Hi, everybody. How's it going? Okay, jump around. Let's see if somebody has a question that I didn't already do. Did I already do one from typo? I don't remember. I'm going to click it. Let's see what we got. So hopefully it's somebody that we didn't already, a little bit of a, I don't know why this download thing is popping up. That's annoying. This is from Fa Niar. So it could be a Fanny R. I'm not sure, but let's see what we got here. It's another, or it's a, yeah, kind of a 300 or a 36 days. Let's see what we get. I don't even know what we're looking at yet, so let's not worry too much about it yet. Well, let's see. We got some tubes, and they are inflating. It's kind of just, there's a little bit of a pop in there, pop, and then they're inflating. I think we can do something really quick here. I don't think it would take. I don't think it would take a ton of time. Very neat. I like the transition of colors here. But let's jump into cinema and see if we can make something quickly along these lines. So my thought would be, let's make a couple of, let's see, what's a cool shape to do here? We could do a series of stars. We could do a helix maybe. Let's see, if we make a helix and we flatten it, and we give it no height, so we just get this swirl. Then we can increase the number of spins, and we can let that intersect. In fact, why don't we copy that, and then I'm going to paste it, and we'll make a second one, spun 180, and now we got 2 of them. But then we can copy and paste those, and we'll spin it 90 degrees, and now we got 4 of them, and none of them should be really touching. In fact, if we increase our inside radius right there, then yeah, that should work pretty well, and they shouldn't be bumping into each other. Now, right away, let's go and a couple different things we could do. We could. I'm gonna cut back on the swirls here. We want this to run quick in the live stream, so we'll cut back on the number of swirls, and then we could put this into a sweep. But I wonder if it'd be more fun to put into a volume. Let's do it. Yeah, why don't we do it? In fact, why don't we go extra fancy? We'll put this into a volume, but we're going to make it a fancy. We'll take it a little bit more complicated. I like that. We're going to put all these into a connect. I'm not sure if this will work. And then I'm going to make a MoGraph MoSpline. What, you say? Well, we're going to change the spline, the MoSpline, to spline mode. And then I'm going to go to the spline tab, and I'm going to drag in a source spline, which is going to be the connect object. And let's go and hide these and see if our MoSpline is outputting it. And it doesn't seem like it is. Now, out of curiosity, if I were to drag in a helix, will it? And yes, it does, which means it doesn't like this connect object. Let's see if we can force it to like the connect object by putting the connect object into a spline mask. We'll hide the spline mask and tell the MoSpline to look at the spline mask, and that indeed did trick it. So there's a thing, here's a new catchphrase for you guys. I always say, when in doubt, use a connect object. But when you're doing spline stuff and the connect object isn't working, when in doubt, put it into a spline mask, because it was making it so that the MoSpline wasn't viewing the connect object as a spline, but you put it into a spline mask and it's like, oh, it is a spline, okay, and now it did indeed do it. So now we've got that going. Let's go ahead and create an end side and a sweep. And then we'll put the end side and the MoSpline into the sweep. And now you can see that even if I were to scale up this end side big or small, nothing's happening. And that's because our MoSpline has taken it over. And so it comes with its own rail. So if I were to scale this up, you can see I can actually scale up the thickness of this based on not the sweep, but based on purely the width here. So let's go ahead and change our mode here. And you can see the way our count is pinching, and I want more of an even distribution of points. So let's do that first. Let's grab our helixes, and I'm going to change it from adaptive to uniform. And actually, maybe that's based on the spline here. Can we change the type of spline this is? Spline, vertex, count. Oh, okay. We can do it directly inside of the MoSpline by changing it to the count. And now we can change the exact number of points that are spinning around this thing, which is very useful. Now, we could go and do this right now like this. We can just do it where we have these this is very clean. It's very square. You see all these polygons are very square. That's the kind of thing I like to see. But I guess just to throw it out there, we could also do this setup, and let's temporarily turn that off, and we'll make a copy of the MoSpline. Hide the originals. We could also go and make a volume builder, and we're going to drop in the MoSpline, and we'll put, let's see, what do we need to do here? In the MoSpline, I'm going to tell it that has a density of 1, so it should be viewing a bunch of points, and this voxel size might be too big. So yeah, if I drop this down to 5, you can suddenly see we are getting something. And now, and we have to change the density because it's kind of, it's like how many little times is it checking the surface of the MoSpline. Now, if you have dragged in splines, and let's do it here. If I drag in a spline inside the volume builder, you'll see that the volume builder actually has 2 settings. It says it's got the density and the radius, but it is not doing that on the MoSpline, and is not asking us about the radius of the MoSpline because it's feeding in directly whatever we're feeding this width in to be. So I'm going to grab our builder, and let's go ahead and shrink it down a little bit. Let's say down to 2, and I can see it's become quite detailed. And what's cool is in the MoSpline, I can twirl down our width here, and we could shrink these, and I can actually make it thinner or thicker at different parts here. So why don't we thin it out a little bit on the edge? We can't go too far because it's going to erase it out, and I don't want this to be incredibly high poly. And I do also want to make sure that these aren't quite touching in the middle. So why don't we go ahead and grab all of our helixes and increase our inside radius. So as I tick this up, and we might need to go a frame forward to force a refresh. I'm not actually sure what we need. Okay, I turned on and off the spline mask, and that finally forced a refresh. Now let's go ahead and make a volume mesher. Throw that inside there, and boom, we've got a mesh going around. And you see we actually are getting this getting thinned out everywhere. Now it is creating a significantly higher poly count, and if we want it to be lower, we have to increase our voxel size. And as we increase our voxel size, it is indeed making it lower poly, but now we're losing more of our tail because the tails aren't detailed enough. That's fine. I'm going to let it go down to this point. Let's go ahead and throw in a smooth in here. We have to use a light touch because as we smooth it out, it's also going to thin it out and make it disappear. And then we could also make a smoothing deformer and then make that a child of the volume mesher as well, and you'll see that this is smoothing out those existing parts as well. So I just want to throw out there that we also have this cool options with a volume mesher. But let's keep moving with our sweep here. And I think we should be able to change the, we can also change the thickness of our sweep doing that same way. So why don't we go ahead and do it now? It's just, you can just see it's cleaner this way. So we can go ahead and pinch that out. I like the way that's looking. So having done all of that, let's go ahead and make this, I'm going to make a copy and paste of it, turn off the old one, and now we can make this one editable. So we just got our final geometry. Let's go ahead and weld our caps on. I'm going to say connect and delete. We could have hit checkbox before we made it editable. If you go into the sweep, you can see under caps, you can say create single object, and then it wouldn't create separate caps when you make it editable. But here we go. We did make caps. Now we did, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hit undo. We've got all of our caps. Undo one more time. I'm going to say I want my caps to be n-gons. And now we'll make it editable. Actually, it's like single object, make editable. And you see that, oh, it did triangulate. Didn't I just say n-gons? I said n-gons, but it's still triangulating that one. I guess it's because we're creating a single object. That's interesting. Anyway, I'm going to not make a single object. Let's make it editable. I just want to make this as clean as possible because we're going to do some soft body dynamics on it. So we can grab all of our caps. I'm going to hit select all. Let's hit, I actually think I might want to do bevel. Let's go ahead and give this a quick save. So this is number 4. And let's just say inflating tubes. Now, if I hit I for inner extrude, it's going to shrink them down, but I can overshoot my destination. But if we use a bevel, MS, we can turn on limit. And now as I pull it, you'll see that the cap actually will terminate after a second. As soon as it kind of pinches down to nothing, it will terminate. Now, because I'm on polygon mode, it's also extruding it outward, which is fine. Actually, I kind of like it in this instance. But keep in mind that there is an entire n-gon up on the tip here. So what we are going to do is go to point mode, select all, right click, optimize. And actually there's a shortcut for optimize, which is UO. And you'll see that that will weld on. And now we can grab all of these and say connect and delete. And then I'm going to optimize again. So UO. And now everything should be welded together. And that does mean if we put in a subdivision surface, it should subdivide fairly well. So these could become nice and rounded. And we've got incredibly low poly overall shape here. So quite pleased with that. So now that we've got that going, let's see if we can get these to start inflating. We're going to be able to do some fun little things here. We're going to whip through these really quickly. Let's go into our soft body. Well, let's right click and add a simulation, soft body. And let's go and turn off gravity. So Command D, Dynamics, General, Gravity equals 0. And now let's go ahead and hit frame forward. Boop. And I want to make sure that this is running pretty fast. Okay, you'll see that it is playing all right. It's not amazing playback. We're only getting 2 frames a second, but there's a lot of geometry here. Probably should have made less swirls on the tails because this inner part's really the only part that mattered for our purposes. But we're still getting some reasonable playback. All right, now we'll slow down as things start colliding. But let's see what can happen if we maybe start increasing our rest length. Or we could even increase pressure. Let's try starting with that. I'm going to increase the pressure to 55. It's a little dangerous to do a bigger number right out of the gate because you see it's going to go boom and inflate right away and then start maybe exploding a bit. And actually there is no map on fall off, so maybe pressure is not the best one for our purposes here. So I'm a little bit curious on the way this rest length is going to work. You know what I'm going to do? We want to do some tests, and we want them to run relatively quickly. So let's go ahead and just select one of these tails. I'm going to hit UP to split it out as its own. And let's temporarily yank this other one out. And we will come back to it, but I'm going to hide it for now and delete the tag. So now we just got one tail, and I should run at significantly faster times. So now we can do quicker tests. I'm less concerned with it crashing on us. So when you set a rest length, and we go up to 200, let's frame forward, and you're going to see it's going to go blurb, and it's going to inflate really big. And that was already kind of cool. That was really cool, actually. Let's play that again. Like, look at the way that's exploding outward. It's because some of the initial points are, oh, it's just getting forced out, and it couldn't float away quick enough. It's even, like, unraveling itself right away. Like, that's already super cool. Let's just throw that out there. In fact, I like that so much, I'm going to save this and then save a new version and continue, so anybody on Patreon can go check that part out before we go and mess up that effect. Now, one of the tests I want to do here was, can we use a vertex map to drive our fall off here so that it's not the scale, the rest length doesn't go. I never realized there was a vertex map on the rest length. So let's go ahead and create a vertex map on here. I'm going to select one point, and let's go ahead and say selection, set vertex weight, whatever, because that just makes a tag. Now we can turn on use fields. In the fields, I don't care about the default. Let's just feed in a spherical field. And now you can see that it's got a fall off that we can control. So let's go ahead and increase the radius a bit. And now you can see that this middle part is got full effect and the outside's got very little effect. In fact, let's go and make sure that the remapping is all the way from the middle to the outside. And now if we were to go, oh, and now we have to go into our soft body and drag in our vertex weight. So I want to see what effect this has. Interesting. Very interesting. It looks like if something has 0 vertex weight, it actually shrinks it down to 0. It's putting its scale down to 0, but the inside is being fully applied. So first of all, it is working, which is awesome. And it's really interesting that this tail is shrinking down and shrinking down to almost infinitely tiny. But then once it gets inside this radius, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to have a little bit of radius. So I'll chill out. So actually, if we wanted this to inflate, we have to start thinking about fields in a more complex way. So right now, this vertex map is being driven, and right now it's being, I don't know if a vertex tag can go above 100%, to tell you the truth. We're about to find out. So I'm going to unclamp it, which shouldn't change anything. But now I'm going to create a solid, and I'm going to say I want the solid to add. So what's happening is, imagine the solid is by itself, full 100% everywhere. It's just a solid. It's a value of 100%. But now I'm adding it to whatever the sphere is doing, which means that should be 100%, but this inner part should be 200%. So this is actually working the way I hope it is. This inner part should inflate. And indeed it did. So vertex maps can go above 100%. This is very valuable information for us to keep in mind for the future. So that's awesome. Like that is great. This is good news. Now, what do we want to do? Well, I think we want to, it's dangerous to have a rest length just pop into existence. So why don't we have it inflate into its final position? So at the time of 0, we want it to be 100%, so it's default. And then we'll let it play up to, let's say, frame 40. And by the time it gets there, we're going to inflate up to 300%. So there's a transition into it. So we hit play, and I can see it does a better job of kind of scaling up. And it does, like, that's awesome. Like, I'm very, very pleased with what the results we're getting out of here. Like, that is really cool automatically. And I mean, we've got all sorts of additional controls. I mean, we could be increasing the radius of the sphere, and as I do, the entire thing should inflate. If I pull it down, the entire thing should go back to its original shape. So actually, it does seem like it got a little bit bigger. I mean, we're applying, that is interesting. Why is it doing any of that if it's at 100%? I'm not quite sure. If we said 0, whoa, be careful. Whoa. Okay, that's really cool. But yeah, it does seem to inflate already. So maybe my understanding here is a little off. Let's increase the radius there. If we didn't have this and we have the entire fall off, that tail does seem to shrink. So yeah, I'm not sure what I'm missing there. Boom. So I'm just going to ignore that for now. You know, this is supposed to be a quick one. We're going to rapid fire through it, but we're getting some really good info on this one. But you see, if we're not worried about it colliding with itself right now, and I mean, it is colliding a little bit, but if we went into our dynamics tag and I turn off self collisions, this is going to run so fast. Like, look, we're getting like really great frame rate. It now can intersect with itself, but if we don't worry about that, we're just kind of worried about viewing the scaling and all that, then we can worry about it colliding with itself later. So we've got this inflating, we've got it intersecting itself, and yeah, it's just kind of doing a great job with it. Now we could do some things to control the dynamics a little bit more. Maybe we could add in some stiffness here, not too much. We'll do a stiffness of 1, and that should stop it from exploding all out. But now it's trying to keep its individual parts in its original position. And it's causing it to like kind of flower out, which is cool. And that could be really cool if we that could be really cool if we wanted to like kind of inflate some guts or do some sort of ribbon or something that's like piled up on itself. Just turn on self collisions, and this would be keeping everything in approximately the same location. You see, it actually starts forcing it to spiral helix around. Not a perfect helix. I'm kind of happy it's not a perfect helix, but that is right there. Dang cool effect. But we are increasing our rest length up to 300, which seems to be a little extreme. So let's go ahead and just select our one keyframe and change this one value to 200. And let's let it inflate a little bit. Okay, now it's a little more calm. So now it starts making me more confident in dragging in our original sweep. So I'm going to keep the quick one. Let's do that. I can actually just steal the vertex tag and the dynamics tag over to it. We don't need the selection tags. Those actually just slow down cinema. Having a selection tag is almost as bad as having an entire additional object, and you know cinema doesn't like having a lot of objects. But with our collisions turned off, no collisions, this should actually give us not amazing, but reasonable playback. And the vertex map is going to continue to work because it's based off of fields and not based off of existing points. Yeah, that's doing a great job of inflating. I don't think stiffness was really the way to go because it's forcing some stiffness. Now, if we were trying to emulate a little bit of the original effect, we'd need this to fall into a floor. So, and gravity is easier than creating a sideways wind. So why don't we just go ahead and create a floor here. I'm going to grab our original geometry. We're at the time of 0, only make changes to dynamic objects at the time of 0. And I can pull this up into the air a little bit, and it's going to need a little bit of space so it doesn't intersect. And let's go and turn on gravity, Command D. Expert, let's get our, not expert, general. We can right click on the gravity little tick marks, and it's going to jump it back to its default. That's honestly a shortcut that I should have been using a long time ago and was not. And let's see, stuff's going well, so let's go ahead and save this as another new version. So gravity's back on. They should fall to the ground. I'm going to put dynamics on the floor, and let's grab both the floor and our tubes, and I want them to freely slide past each other. So I'm going to get rid of all the bounce and all the friction. It can just freely, like it's slimy, it can just slide past itself. So let's go ahead, and there's still no self-collision, so hopefully we're still getting reasonable playback. You're going to see it's going to inflate, but it's going to fall down to the floor, and now they're sliding along the floor. And with the gravity, hopefully this would stop them from pushing past each other. So now you can see that is doing a great job of kind of slithering around. It's actually a little bit creepy. So with all that working, why don't we go ahead and quickly turn on a nice SSAO. Let's go ahead and drop on something with some color here. I guess it's kind of green and slimy, so let's go ahead and make it green. Make it a bluish green, yeah. Cool, so we do that, and now I don't think we're going to get a good enough playback here, so I'm going to go ahead and tell it to, yes, indeed, do self-collisions, but then we'll go into our render settings. I'm going to tell it to do a hardware render. Don't worry about saving, output, all frames, and give it a quick save, and now let's output that. I'm going to hide our spherical field because I just don't want to see that in the viewport. Hit play, or not play, let's hit render, and there we go. Sorry, I zoomed up on the banana from the previous one. So as you can see, even now it's taking a while to do the calculation, which is why we're rendering here and not to the viewport, because it would be really hard to get feedback in the viewport if we were doing this. But now each of these individual tubes is successfully inflating and pushing back all of the other ones. Now we will see here that with them all inflating, they're losing space. And it looks like this top one is escaping by pushing up out the top. So what we could do is hit Command D and increase our gravity and tell gravity to say, nope, you got to stay, you can't go up so much, you got to stay down. Gravity should hopefully become a more overwhelming force. We could actually, you know what, I'm going to go up to 3,000, so gravity's 3 times as strong as it used to be. And that's looking pretty good, and let's hit play before we do more changes. But hit play, and like that's doing a pretty good job of growing up there. And honestly, it would probably be, what's a good way to do this? It would probably be more impressive if they were a little bit skinnier to start out. So I'm going to select all of them and hit, how do we shrink them? If I hit D for extrude, it should shrink them, but I don't want it's going to invert the other tails. It's going to invert the bottom tails. Let's let's see, MG, can I just iron them? Ooh, okay, iron is doing a pretty good job there. By just saying MG, the iron tool, and ironing down, it changed the geometry on the tip a little bit here. I'm not too worried about that, but it did make them all a little bit more skinny. I think it's just going to look cooler if they're a little bit skinnier to start out with. So having done that, let's go ahead and do another quick hardware render. So immediately you can see them start scaling up. They're also falling to the ground. We want to give a few frames for them to successfully fall to the ground first. And then even here you can see the gravity now is starting to force these to be a little bit flatter. So we could add some extra flexion and shear forces so those can't bend in quite so much. So far, because we made them thinner and because the gravity is stronger, you see they're not popping up out, but they are very clearly sliding around and past each other. So that is pretty cool. Let's just hit play. Yeah, I feel like, so a couple quick changes we'll make again. Let's not have these start inflating right away. So we're going to give this 10 frames to settle on the ground before it starts going, and then we'll give it an extra 10 frames to go. That starts inflating. I think I do want it to inflate bigger. So we'll grab the dynamics tag again, grab its one keyframe. I will say go up to 300. Start filling up the space more. I am going to add a little bit of friction in, not too much. Let's give it a friction of 20. So they're each 20. This will just stop them from sliding too far along the ground, but shouldn't stop them too much. And then inside the dynamics tag, let's go ahead and give ourselves some extra shear forces. So let's jump this up to, I don't know, 200 and flexion of 200. This is just stopping it from any individual polygon from bending too much. And structural is fine. We want that. We don't want that to be crazy because they do have to stretch. Okay, so that's a bunch of little changes. Let's see what that gives us. So we got our first 10 frames for it to just, oh dear. Okay, well, okay, I just learned something. It is immediately inflating to some degree. So the way we are currently feeding in the field, yes, it gets stronger and stronger as the inflation goes. But the field is already, oh, that makes sense, actually. That makes sense. I get it. We are ramping up our rest length, and that becomes a multiplier. But we are in our field, inside the fields here, we are adding a solid, which means in the middle point, it's already at like 200%, 100 from the spherical field and 100 from the solid. So it's inflating it extra big in the beginning. So in order for this to properly work the way I'm kind of treating it, we'd actually want the either strength or the spherical field to be keyframed up. So we could go into its strength here and keyframe that up over the initial time as well. So at the frame of 10, the strength is actually at 0. And then as we get up to 50, that would actually now have gone up to 100. But let's check out, what, regardless of that, let's see if there's any good feedback we can see. The friction is doing a good job of stopping everything from shooting all over the place. It does suddenly inflate once we get to frame 10. It's settled on the ground. The increased flexion and shear, you can see it's not collapsing in on itself as much, so that's good. I mean, the way it's exploding and flowering out and all that stuff, it's pretty cool. I'm pretty pleased with it. It is going a little bit. It is going a little bit crazy. I mean, at a certain point, you can't stop it. We could keep on counter fighting it with more gravity, stop those from inflating too quick. It could just be going so big and so quick that it doesn't have enough time to slow down or to unfold itself. The friction could be fighting it. We do have the option, it would be kind of a guess, but we could take this floor, copy and paste the floor, move the floor up into the air. I have to go high enough that it's not going to really catch the inflation, but it's going to stop stuff from popping up too high. But make sure you do flip it upside down because the normals of that do matter. Let's make that floor, it's there, but it's invisible. So now, I mean, we'd have to be careful, but something that would be kind of cool is if we do move this. Actually, let's do it. I'm going to move it down pretty dang close to the snakes, actually. So now as they try and inflate, it's going to squish up against like a pane of glass effectively and stop it from going too far. So I think that might be a kind of an interesting effect. It's not specifically what we were going for, but that might be neat. So let's let this one run for a few. So you can see now our assumption was correct. The added strength on both of them was forcing it to start inflating right away, but now it's not inflating right away. So now it gets 10 frames to settle on the ground, which seems like about the right amount of time. And then right about now, the inflation is going to start ramping up. So now you can see it slowly start inflating. It's not only increasing our rest length from 100 to 300, the extra bonus size is also increasing. So yeah, everything, the structure is forcing these to spiral around instead of just like inflate outward. It is inflating upward. We haven't hit the second pane of glass yet, but I think we will soon. Doing a good job so far. Everything's starting to push up against each other. Nice. There we go. And now this shouldn't be able to go up much higher than that as it's inflating. And then given enough frames, this might fly out and settle down eventually. Now you can see some flatness happening at the top, so I think we're hitting that upper pane of glass. Pretty weird and interesting. Like, I like it. It's pretty fun. We'd have to just give that some more frames to settle itself down, because it will keep on inflating until frame 50, so it's actually not even done doing that. And of course, the final thing I would want to do is just turn on the subdivision surface to make sure that that is looking good. Yeah, it's doing a pretty good job. And you can see they're not flying up in the air like they were before. They can still probably pass over each other. There's nothing stopping them from doing that technically. But once again, we could do some... we could do various things. Actually, a funny idea that's popped in my head to stop that would be if we like draped a blanket over it, essentially, like a plane with more soft bodies, and they'd be constantly pushing down some weight on everything, stopping them from wanting to pop up into the air. So it must be like putting this floor, but it'd just be a blanket resting on top of it. It's really interesting how these are shooting out on the outside, forming these flower shapes. I kind of wouldn't expect that as much because we weren't using any shape, any stiffness. So I'm not entirely sure what that is. I think it's just growing big enough, fast enough on the outside that it doesn't know where to go. We are hitting our final growth point here. So let's see, right now should be our final frame of continued growth. So you see it's done growing now. So every frame after this is just it settling down and sliding along the ground based on the frictions that are being applied on the overall shape. Soft Bodies does such a great job. Like, look how gorgeous this overall setup is. Like, that is so nice looking the way it's not passing through itself, it's popping on top of itself. Like, it's just really cool looking ribbons. I just love the way that looks. Like the pattern, these patterns emerging. It's almost like this is like the dynamics version of, you know, when people put sand on a speaker and it starts forming the different what do you call it, the like interference patterns. It's kind of like the noise version of that. Like at a certain point, these have scaled so much that they've got nowhere to go, so they have to start forming these patterns. It just goes to show you can have emergent properties out of nature effectively, that almost form like self-organization. So that's pretty cool, and we can see it. We can see it just settling down here. It's going to keep on probably pushing out and spiraling. Less friction might help. So that's all looking good. I'm not going to make any changes to any of that. Let's just, I'm just going to turn on subdivision surface and make sure that that indeed does run. And I should probably not, yeah, I'm going to hit NA, so we just get the clean polygons here. And we'd let that run, and then we'd just be getting the smoothed out version. I just want to make sure the dynamics are actually running on it, because sometimes, I don't know if it's a bug, but a limitation can be where when you run a dynamic simulation, when you throw it into certain children, it won't acknowledge it unless you bake it. And I mean, it's not like it's difficult to bake, but it's just an extra step and something you have to wait for. So let's see. Yeah, it does seem to fall to the ground. Yeah, and then right now it should start growing. And everything's just going to look better with it being subdivided more here. So we're not going to wait. I'll let this keep on chugging in the background while we go and track down the next question. But that was a fun one. So let's jump back into the chat, everybody. We're doing good here. We're cranking through them. Let's see. Some people are chatting back and forth here. Hopefully the chat is still continuing. Actually, give me a split second. I'm going to click on here, and I want to see if my chat is continuing through, because yeah, it seems like my hybrid chat thing, which is giving me all the chats from both YouTube and from Twitch and from Facebook. It is no longer updating, but I did have Twitch also open so I could see that. Let's check out some of the chat here. Thank you, everybody. Let's see, lots of good conversation going on in there. Not some of it's not specifically questions for me. Leo just has a typed question. How would you tackle the center middle points in a mirrored pose morph that are meant to be 100% together later during the animation? Since the pose morphs are additives and everything else in the mirror would be doubled. That is way, sorry, Leo, but I am not following that question super specifically. But I appreciate it. Paul has a link to Vimeo. I am not sure 100% that the question is for me, but let's find out. Oh, no, that's a link to the chain project. So I think that's just interperson chat in there. Fried, what do you got? You got a link to Instagram here. Let's see what we've got here. I'm going to, come on, window, come over here. Okay, so this is a motion mate. And let's hit play. Let's see what we got. Whoa. Oh, neat. Okay, so what do we got? Well, first of all, this motion mate. 3D time created by Andre Jazunka. It could just be Zunka, or it could be Andre J. Zunka. But what it seems like we have here is a bunch of really fun hair things. I totally think we could do some of this. Let's try and think of, I mean, it's very spherical, but the spherical nature is needed. And it's almost like inverting a very basic concept in a really clever way. Let's see how our render's doing here on the previous one. Blurp. Yeah, pretty neat ribbony stuff, just letting it inflate and not push through each other. Heavy gravity. I think that growing a little slower, maybe a little less friction. Obviously, get some sexy lighting and stuff in there. It could be really cool. But we will wrap that one up right there. Maybe I'll tinker with that some more later by myself. But anyway, getting to this hair thing. Let me make sure that I have the correct. Okay, do have the correct screen up. Cool. So here is my thought. I'm trying to think of how to do it differently because I don't want to just make a sphere on a sphere and have it circle around. But because it's having the pull inward, I'm trying to think of a way around that. You know what? I got a way. We're going to make a torus shape, and we're going to make it a little skinnier. And actually, probably we're going to make it a bigger ring. We're going to make it skinnier. I'm going to make a duplicate of it, and we're going to make this one editable. And we're going to do a loop selection, UL. We're going to loop there. I'm going to do UL and loop there, and hit UF, hold down Shift, grab that, delete. So you can see I've just got these inner polygons like that, exactly what I want. Those will be a surface for us to grow from. And then, how do I make this not exactly what they were doing? I mean, I kind of got this little plant thing going. I guess we can make it, yeah, it doesn't have to be a circle per se, so we can make more of a spiral, I'm thinking. What's kind of a weird shape we can make? Let's make a little bit of a disc shape here, and we're going to put this into a cloner, and we're going to make it radial. Let's make it flat on the ground. Pull out the count. 5 is fine. Transform. Let's stretch it out. There we go. Pinch those in like that. I like that. We can change our radius like that. T for scale. We'll scale that out. Actually, we want that not to be all the way. Okay, that's good. And then I'd kind of like to swirl those around. So something that's cool. Let's see, what's a good way to do that? The twist doesn't behave that way. So is this the... Let me think. how do you twist? Twirl something. Plane effector. How do I do that? I've done it before. I just need to think of it. Now, if we did a twist, that doesn't... A twist that needs verticality to do some twisting. So if we wanted to spin the entire thing... Why am I utterly blanking on this? I mean, I could put a bend in that, but that's not what I want to do. I mean, I feel like that... Is it just a displacer? But then it's not going to spin. I guess that doesn't... Yeah, oh, okay, that doesn't do it that way. So yeah, actually, I'm in my head, I'm not thinking of anything specific here. Well, that's fine. I'm just going to put this as a child. And then if we were to bend 90 degrees... Spin it. Right now I'm just kind of guessing until we get the proper curvature. So it's not that one. It's not that one. So it must be this one. There we go. We'll sort of. We'll go -90. Oops, I don't know what I just did. Undo, -90. And then we change the bend. Very strange. Fit the parent. Angle. 180 bend. Cool. That's what I wanted. Now, well, that's just strange. I guess we would do it after the fact. It's because they're not scaled until after the fact, so they're really fat, but they're being scaled down, so you get those weird shapes. You know what? I don't care about the twirl anymore. But the twirl, I am a little bit. The twirl is throwing me off there. Okay. Let's not get too bogged down here because we're getting bogged down. Okay, stop. And then we put that into a connect, and we've got this geometry. So here's the actual cool trick here is we want this to be spinning. In fact, why don't we do some of the cool new we're gonna do cool new stuff with fields here. So I'm actually gonna make a clone, and I'm gonna make a clone of 1. And we'll see if this actually works, because what I want to do is put hair on here. So we're going to put a simulation, hair object, add hair. So this is supposed to be on the connect and growing hair, but it is not. So that doesn't work. So let's try doing it instead on this cloner. We'll go simulate, add hair. It does not add hair. So that means this needs to be made editable. Turn off the cloner, simulate, add hair, and it does add it. Now, can we still control it with the cloner? And if I were to tell the cloner to, oh, I don't know, let's just say transform and rotate a little bit, would those follow? They do not. If I put the hair in with it, does it follow? Spin. Maybe. It's hard to tell. So now we have to keyframe that. So keyframe, fast forward to the end, fast forward, run, play. Okay, that's not counting, unfortunately. So we can't use the cloner trick there. I was just hoping we could use time as a big offset. Doesn't like it. All right, so we've got these hairs growing. The length is just kind of set. You can change, what's the way you change and we can change length inside of the fall off there, but that's always a big pain in the butt. So on 1 degree, yeah, I guess to get to the essence of some of the things we want to do here, a lot of this we shouldn't worry about too much. How many hairs do I want? I'm going to say 1,000. And then in the editor, I'm going to say I want to see not the hair guides, but I want to see the actual hairs. I want to see 100% of them. So now if I click off this, we're actually seeing final hairs. So what we're going to do is, as much as I'm trying not to use plugins, it would take too long to get a looping animation like I want here without using signal. So I'm going to right click and add a grayscale gorilla signal tag. So I designed this plugin. It's one of my favorites. I'm going to drive the H parameter, and all I'm going to do is drag this down. And the reason for doing this is if I drag my curvature like this and I say I want to rotate 45 degrees, I can say that I want it to be an additive loop. And now every time, let's say that 25 frames goes by, it's going to suddenly spin and then stop, spin and stop, spin and stop. So we need more time. So I'm going to say 50 frames, and let's go ahead and jump this up to 100. So it's going to spin and stop for a while, spin and stop for a while. So we got that all going for us. Working great. Hair, dynamics. Inside the dynamics, we've got, forces. Each hair has its own built-in gravity. I'm going to give it a positive gravity. So it's constantly trying to pull the hair up. You can see how it's trying to recenter the hair vertically. Dynamics, properties. Let's see, what do we got? Rest mix, nope. Drag, okay, here's some drag. Drag would probably be really good. Let's add in 75% drag. Oh, look at that. Every time it moves, it is snap. Oh, it's being left behind and then trying to approach it. Let's see if we can increase stiffness beyond 100. Unfortunately, we can't. So what we can do is in the advanced tab in dynamics, I'm going to give it less segments, so it's going to treat it a little bit stiffer. So I'm going to drop this down, and as we do this, each time I drop it down further, it's going to be kind of stiffer than the time before. So what's the minimum we can get away with? So I like the way 5 looks. I'd really like those to snap in quicker, so what we're going to do is go back to our forces, and we're going to make gravity way stronger. I'm going to go 10 times as strong. So you can see it's going to be left behind and then snap back. Left behind, snap. I really like that motion, so that's really cool. And the way we're driving that, of course, is with signals. So we could change this curvature. Like we're easing in and easing out, but we could, of course, snap that. So it could be like, go whoop. So, we got a lot of options there, but I mean, ease in, ease out is a good natural thing to go for. All right, so that's cool. And then at the same time, we got the exact same concept that we're going to do on the outer torus that we made. So we can go ahead to our, select the torus, go to hair, add hair, and now we're growing hair from there as well. Now, here's where things get interesting, is I'm going to tell this forces I want no gravity, and then they're going to kind of just aim outward. Let's do the exact same thing. So I'm going to say I only want 1,000 hairs. I want to see the actual hairs. I want to see all hairs. I can deselect it now. I'm going to move this down to the torus, and let's actually steal the rotation, except I'm going to say instead of going 45, I'm going to go negative 45. So it's doing equal but opposite. And but that doesn't have the gravity. A couple things we need to do with it, actually. Why don't we go ahead into our dynamics, and we'll go add in that 90% drag, which is doing an awesome job. I really like the way that's being left behind. And then we need to add a particle force. So let's go and add a simulation particle attractor. And the important thing here is in the hair, I'm going to tell it in the forces to, right now it's including everything. So I'm going to make sure that this middle hair, I don't want it to see the attractor, but these outside hairs should be. So now what do we do? Well, let's go ahead and head into a speed limit of about 2,000, something reasonable. And now let's start increasing our strength. Not enough. Let's do 10 or 1,000. I'm not sure. Okay, there we go. So now I'm at 10,000, and now you can see it's actually starting to actually react a little bit. So let's go and go even higher. And let's see what we get. So now it's going to turn, and the attraction is so high that it's really forcing it to the middle. I'm going to see if we can lower our speed limit and if that will do anything. It's doing a little too much there. Speed limit is just like how quick could a particle move via the parameters we're feeding it. I just want to make sure it wasn't too much. So now I think we just need to control, let's not worry about the speed limit. It's high enough where it shouldn't be doing anything. And now, yeah, okay, that's almost perfect already. It's pretty much getting to its final position right as it's about to start doing its next bit of movement. So yeah, that's actually working pretty great. So you can see the overall effect that we're getting is we get this final shape, and you get that sudden pull away, but then it goes back to the middle, and these outer ones are being left behind. So you take that, and you just get some nice nice hairs applied here. So let's go ahead and make this kind of, well, what I had been thinking was that we should make it kind of like a plant of some sort. So this is the outer ones. So we're not going to go too far, but if we were to just make it, let's make it a nice deep green here, and maybe go to a lighter green, and let's kind of kill the specular. We're going to make these really thick, so let's go 22 to 22. I usually make our root and the tip the same and completely control it via this spline, so we can just make it go thinner like that. And let's give this a quick save. We haven't saved it at all, which is dangerous. Number 5. What do we call it? Dragging hair gravities. Quick render here. Okay, way too fat, so let's go 11, 11, 11, 11. Better. Let's give it, actually something that's kind of fun here is like, let's make that thicker, thinner, so it's kind of like a little bulge out on the tip there. And let's go 6 and 6. So there you go. A little bit more interesting. Maybe even pull that back a bit still. Yeah, that's not bad. And then something I typically would do is go to scale, and then we can give this, it's already got a variation of 20%. So some are longer, some are thinner. Stylistically, it depends on what you want to do. Inside of color, I could add in a 5% hue variation. Now you see we get different colors. We can add saturation in, I mean, it does something, but it's not much. 5% saturation. Value is a very heavy-handed parameter. You got to go easy. If you go too far, you'll dramatically, you see these start getting black even at 15%. So you got to go really easy on how bright that is. But yeah, a little bit of variation there. Maybe cut the saturation on that just back a little bit. There we go. Yeah, the torus is spinning. I probably don't want that one to render, but I do want that to render because I just want this final one to go. And then why don't we make a duplicate of that plant? I mean, this is an old school technique. I've talked about this many times, but on this middle one, why don't we make these kind of like some sort of flowers? It's really straightforward. Let's go ahead and I'm going to invert this gradient, and then we're going to make a nice, let's make an orange, bright orange flower on the tip, and that's going to do that. And right around the way this gradient is behaving, we can go to our thickness, and let's go ahead and really thicken that sucker up there, and we'll go easier on the stem, pull back on that base part. Let's thicken them up to 11, 11, and let's see what we get there. So now you can see we get this like big fat flower on the end. I mean, what's great, I mean, it's fun. I mean, it's not like it's super detailed, but it looks neat. It gives it a little bit of depth. We've got that color variation in there. Probably chill that out a little bit. Saturation, chill out. Hue, chill out. There we go. That blends in a little bit better. I'm going to pull that out, and let's make that a little less saturated, a little darker, just to distinguish between that and that. So now we got these flowers, and then got the grass on the outside. So that is working well. I think the scale, I'll go even further on the variation. So we'll do 45 on the overall length of those. You also have the option, or the scale, because then you also have the alternative option of the length. So that will make some of them shorter as well. But I think scale is the way to go. So I'm not going to worry about length. Any other? I mean, we could add some frizz if we wanted to. So those will spread out. Because of the nature of us wanting to see these in a more uniform way, I would go pretty light on it because they're still going to face forward. And then I don't have any kind of a dirt material or anything that I would put on the outside. I mean, it would be nice to throw on some sort of dirt. I just don't have anything handy. So we'll just make it a really dark color with a very shallow specular. So nothing fancy there. We'll apply it to these petals as well, just so they kind of fade into the background. And yeah, I think that's the overall effect. And then you just kind of view this from the front here, or I guess at the top. We'll render out a couple of frames. Honestly, it loops pretty quick. Let's see how quick it does loop, because we are seeing the final result here. So we should be able to, because we're getting back to the same position, I guess we'd have to do one full rotation. So we're going 45 degrees. Let's see, so it's 360 divided by 45, 8. So now we go, it's 8. So it's 8 times 45, which is just 360. That doesn't make sense, does it? From 0 to 45 times has to happen 8 times, and that's just, 315. Interesting. So 315 is actually the number of frames we want, minus 1 to get a perfect loop. If they actually are getting to their final position again, which they kind of seem to, so that might actually kind of be a perfect loop. I'm going to cut our resolution in half just so we can see if this will actually finish. Render. I mean, it does render really quick. Now, actually, that's a good point. If we're viewing this perfectly from the top, these top ones are not going to show up very clearly. And they are getting illuminated. Something that is neat is, I'm going to grab both of them. If we go into the illumination tab, we could play around with these where we don't worry about a lot of these settings, like shadow density, receiving shadow, self shadow, back shadow. Don't care about any of those. And then diffuse. Yeah, okay, by getting rid of diffuse, you see that they're 100% colored in all the time. So now, yeah, so these top ones might end up being a little bit flat if we don't have a little bit of an angle. The frizz we added in should help, but honestly, something I'm kind of thinking is it might be cool not to see this geometry at all. So all we're seeing is the actual, plant matter here. So having done that, let's go ahead and put them in a nice blue sky. Make a sky object, put that in. Of course, it's going to be a big gradient traveling around, and keep in mind that the very bottom of a giant sphere, which we're looking down on, is what will ultimately be receiving the color. So that's actually black here. If we invert it, then it's white. If we change this to blue, not a perfect blue, something like that, and then we'll fade it up to a lighter color. That can go pretty light. Yeah, then we're going to see that gradient there. That's fine. We got a little turbulence if we wanted to break up that pattern just a little bit. Actually, you got to be careful because now you can see the black is sneaking through the turbulence. But because we're never getting to this black color, I could just make a duplicate of this blue, drag it to the end, and it should stop that from happening. And now it's just not quite a perfect gradient. Render. Those are popping out pretty nicely. Yeah, nothing too crazy here. Why don't we make it this actually square? So I'll go 640, 640, boom, boom. Zoom up on that a little more. I'm even fine with a little bit of an angle here. And also keep in mind, in the reference piece, they were using a refractive sphere. So all these hairs were inside of a refractive sphere, and that's what we were seeing. We're not going to do that. That'll also kill our render times for a live stream. So let's go ahead and see what we get. We didn't really spend any time on lighting or anything here, but let's just see if we get anything kind of visually interesting. So those are taking, these outer ones are taking longer to settle. These top ones we told to settle really quick because the gravity is pulling them up so strongly. But then it kind of gives us this extra follow through on the top. So I don't know, that's kind of fun. Now, if every like pie slice here was identical, we could get away with only rendering 45 frames. But these were randomly generated, so they're not identical. So if we don't render a full 360-degree rotation, then you won't get a perfect loop. But yeah, if this was built a little smarter, if we had a clone directly onto... wait, why did it suddenly... Look at this. Why did it suddenly go really stiff? It's no longer... dragging behind. Do hair dynamics stop calculating after a certain length? Nice. 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 And then, nope. Nope. Like, why did that happen? I've never seen that before. But what's cool is you did see how freaking fast that rendered. Okay, let's check our hair. Gravity, that's cool. Dynamics. Advanced, nope, that's fine. Modifier is nothing. Animation, relax, no. Auto time. I mean, it says auto time 0 to 90. This clearly was working beyond 90. It's still working over 180. Enable collisions, rigid, forces, hair to hair. I don't know. Okay, if anybody in the chat has any idea why that might have happened, please let me know, because I don't even know where to look. We can go to our render settings to our hair renderer. Objects. No, that's all fine. Length 20, that's all fine. Multipass, that's a non-variable. Sampling. The attractor shouldn't change anything. That's constantly going all the time. I mean, I was wondering if there's some sort of, like, you know, in, like there's reconstitution after resting contact in things like dynamics, which is, can it die and then come back again? And it, you know, we're saying like, yes, it can, but I didn't think that was a variable in hair. Like if hair stopped moving, I wouldn't think that they would stop moving. Somebody's saying that's an interesting question. Um, okay, well, Level Bevel is saying it might stop because Signal stops. Signal will never stop. You can see it's still spinning. You see these are still turning, so Signal's running. But this stopped running. This was still dynamic up until around this time, around 200. And right now our project time is going to 200. So our frames are past. We're actually rendering out beyond where our project time is. So if we were to tell this to go all the way to 400, then we could. That's probably saying, hey, calculate past 400. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and render. That is a very, very good guess. Did that just start out in a weird first frame? Okay, well, look, here's another variable. You can see, oh, wait, at the time of, they don't have time to settle. And actually, that's an important thing as well. These need some time to get to their 0 position, like that. So we actually need 45 frames before the animation starts for that to work. So we might need to pre-roll this negative 45. So that those have some time to go. Signal should automatically go negative as well. That's the advantage of saying additive on Signal. So, okay, and that didn't indeed seem to work because you see at the beginning when I just did this, all I did was change our start time, but now it pre-rolled the calculations for hair and you see they're already all pointing in the middle, where in our previous run at the very beginning, they were all angled at their funky angles because they hadn't settled in yet. So that was a really easy to fix, but it did work. So let's see what we get. So nice twirl. So we're cranking through. We'll let this finish. And then let's see. Is it going to go beyond 200? I bet you are right. That's a really good guess. And there is a kind of a weird logic to it. Yep, it's still working. So great catch there on for Paul. That's just a bizarre one. I mean, yeah, it's weird, but it's just good to know that there was a fix. It's a weird little sharp gradient there. I guess maybe the turbulence is causing that. And then it looks like I did the bad calculation on our final frame here because we're cutting off right in the middle. So maybe I needed some extra frames there at the end. I'm not going to worry about making a perfect loop now because you can see the concept. And as long as it settles down, then I think we would pretty much get a perfect loop. But I think that this is pretty much what we are seeing in the other one. It is really neat to be able to get to these loops. And honestly, like I said, it's not going to be a perfect loop because these are not all perfectly lined up. If we just go to around there, right before it starts moving again. So if we just go to about frame 50, let's just have this play back to frame 50. It's not going to be a perfect loop because you're going to see a little pop. Oh, wait, these are, okay, here's another variable. This has got 5 sides, so I'd have to do an increment of 5, not 45. So I shouldn't have been spinning 45 degrees in the beginning. I should have done like 360 divided by 5 in order to get units like this. So yeah, just another calculation I didn't think about. It's so unusual for me to work in a unit of 5. I didn't even think about it. So that explains why we're not getting a perfect loop. But yeah, okay, that will wrap this one up. I think there was definitely some cool stuff there. Things I hadn't thought about, like using a tractor to pull hair in to kind of be resetting it and making, it's just kind of neat, like putting a heavy drag behind it. Like we don't have a lot of settings when it comes to hair behaving dynamically, so it's cool that we did have at least that much. So let's give that a save, and I'm going to jump back into the chat and take a look at some of these comments. And yeah, it does seem like my comments on this one thing died, which is a little frustrating. I'm going to restart that app. But I can still see the comments in Twitch. So feel free to put your questions again down here. And I will see them again. Java, a written question. I'm having... Hang on, let me click here and then click here. And Java is saying, I'm having trouble sticking a dynamic object to another. I'm trying to stick a badge on a cloth. So that you've tried using springs, connectors, constraints. Did not do a good job as you're expecting. If there's a way to really fix the points of an object to another. Fine question. Let's see if we can get something reasonable working. Boom, boom, boom. Back to the chat. Okay, so the quickest way to do this is just set up some very, very simple, quick dynamics. So let's set something up like this. Actually, just for our purposes, I mean, did you say cloth or soft body? A badge on a cloth. But you're saying you're using springs and connectors and constraints, so that makes me think you are talking about soft body. So look, we are going to literally make the simplest setup we can. We're going to make a collider cube here. Let's go ahead and make a color in there. Let's go ahead and make a nice orange. Throw that on there and make a sky, because why not? Okay, so now we've got, and let's turn on polygons here. We're going to go ahead and make this a soft body on the cloth. Simulation soft body. Sphere. We're going to add a simulation collider body. We're going to add heavy friction, no bounce, heavy friction so they don't slide off. I hit play, and now we've got some cloth. Now, if we wanted some nice floppy cloth on here, let's go ahead to our soft body, and I'm going to say that you are indeed allowed to have some shear. So let's say low shear and low flexion, which pretty much means it's very, very bendy. Not completely bendy. We can set to 1-1. So now it should be very floppy. You can see it kind of stretch and go straight. And then we can actually increase our structural to like 300, and that should stop it from stretching too much. So that you can see that our squares are being maintained, but they're allowed to be pinched. So that just gives you kind of some floppy cloth on there. And if we drop these to 1-1, then these should be very, you can, by changing the damping, you can dramatically change the overshoot and the overlap and whatnot. So yeah, damping is an incredibly powerful setting when it comes to this kind of stuff. I wonder what a good setting is. Let's say 5.5. I don't want to go forever. Yeah, there we go. That's not bad. Okay, so now let's just say we want to stick something on here. So first of all, let's give this a save in the beginning. Just a smart idea. Let's see. Locking onto cloth. Or soft body. Let's be descriptive. All right, so okay, so dynamics are running, and that's all working well enough. Let's go ahead and make a tiny sphere here so we can clearly see it. And I'm going to make let's go ahead and make it illuminant red, no color, red. Okay, so now we can very clearly see that as well. So I am thinking our first step here would be, let's say, well, where do we want it to stick? Let me just look at a piece of cloth that looks, okay. All right, let's just do it right here. Let's say we want it to be kind of sticking right on that point. We are going to start with a constraint tag. So if we go and we add a constraint tag, character constraint, then I'm going to say that I want it to be clamped. I'm going to go to the clamp tab, and what is it clamped onto? It's clamped onto the plane, and I'm going to say it's clamped onto the surface, and I do want to use the normal, and now I'm going to move it to wherever I want it to be. If I want to be real specific, I hit Shift-C, and I can snap it to that point right there, and it's just exactly there. Turn off snapping, Shift-C, Shift-S, not Shift-C, Shift-S. And now it is there, it's on the surface, it's aligned on Y as a constraint, why not? Or as a Phong normal, and I'm going to say lock the position. Oops, I should not have locked the position. Let's do that again. Shift-S, snap. Whoa there. Okay, see this, that's what threw us off, is I forgot to put the distance down to 0. So now I can snap. Are you not snapping? Snap. Okay, it's behaving a little strangely here. Use normals, fix position. Okay, it is snapping, but a little bit oddly. But okay, let's just pretend that didn't happen. Distance is still 0. Now I should be able to lock it. And now you see it didn't jump because I should have put distance down to 0 in the beginning. So just by doing that, with any luck, let's hit save. With any luck, that should be stuck there. You see that is indeed stuck to the side. But you're probably also going to notice that there's probably like a frame of lag. So let's view it perfectly from the side and hit 1 frame forward. Do you see how that looks like the plane moved and then that didn't? So you see it's like falling behind. So a couple things here. First of all, if we bake our dynamics, let's just go ahead and bake this object. It should be really quick. And we hit 1 frame forward. You see, actually, it is still happening. Now, it's nice to have it baked. It is baked, right? I said bake, but it doesn't look like a baked icon. Let's just make sure. I am curious. Oh, I baked the sphere, not the plane. Okay, bake the actual soft body. Sorry about that. Okay, so now if I hit frame forward, now that I baked it, look, it is actually keeping up with it. It's not falling a frame behind. So just by baking it, that has made it so this is no longer being calculated at the time of dynamics. It's being calculated at the time of animation, I think. So I also want to set this as a falling normal. I think that will keep it pointing straight. Yeah, you can see it's actually stuck on the surface now. So that should be stuck that way. Now, having said that, if you did want to keep this a live dynamic object, let's clear out our bake. And if we were to go to our constraint, I'm going to move the sphere down here, and let's just call it red. I'm going to grab this constraint, and the constraint is calculating at the time of expression. Expression calculates before dynamics. So what I usually do is jump over to generators, and I crank this all the way up. It's a little bit dangerous. There's reasons not to do this. But by putting it on the generator layer after everything, even though we're not baked, if I hit frame forward, you see it is actually moving with the dynamics because it's being calculated after the dynamics. So you'll see that actually will be stuck. Now I mean, this is working fine. Having said that, I have had problems in the past where an object will like reset for some reason. It's like if I'm over here and I grab my plane and I move it and then change the dynamics while the dynamics aren't at 0, it might pop somewhere else and jump. So there's a problem that you could still run into there. But I think that this is a fine start. Now, this is fine for essentially attaching a single point. It's attaching to a single point. But let's try pushing this concept a little bit further. Let's go ahead and we've got our red, but let's say that we wanted to attach like a cube, and the cube should be, what's a good way of saying this? I want the cube to, I'm still snap. I want the cube to be kind of stuck on it, but be stuck on it in more of a, like this is a flat plate here. And I don't want to just stick it to one point. I kind of want a point here and a point here, or we're connecting it, let's say, to 4 points. I'm only going to do 2, but let's say you connected it on 4 different points. These are things that I think we can do. So, but we're just going to connect down 2. So we got this red, and let's go and make a copy of red. And we're going to name this one blue, and we'll make a blue material just so we can be very clear, very explicit. And let's put this on blue. And now I'm going to go to the dynamics or the constraint tag. I'm going to go to clamp. I'm going to say don't lock your position, and I'm going to 0 out the rotation. And I'm going to move it straight up to wherever, let's just say right onto that point, approximately right onto that point. And once again, lock the position. So now we've got 2 different objects and they're both locked onto there. So this is the beginnings of a small rig for us. Well, we wouldn't actually render those red and blue. You could just think of those as nulls right now. But if we were to make, let's go ahead and push our rig a little bit further. Actually, I'm going to move the red one below. And let's make a null. I'm going to make the null a child of red, and I'll 0 out the position on X and Z, and I'm going to move it up into the air a little bit. So this is going to be a pivot point here. So I'm going to go ahead and rename it PIV for piv, and that we'd make the rectangle a child of that. And now let's also make let's copy piv and delete the cube, and I'm going to 0 this out. Not on Y, but on X here. So now there's also a null inside of the blue one. It's actually up a little bit, which is fine. And I'm just going to call this aim. So now that is something for it to aim at. But I think we also probably need an up vector. So I'm going to copy piv one more time. I don't need the cube. It's just a way of getting the null. And let's call this up. And now up, I'm going to hold down shift and just move it up whatever number of units. I'm going to move it up 50 units, okay? So now we got pivot. So you can see pivot is aiming up, the Y is up, and then our goal, our aim, is on negative X. Oh, X is positive right now, but we want negative X. So let's go ahead and add a new constraint tag to that. I'm going to add a character constraint. We'll go to clamp, no, not clamp. I don't want to clamp. I want to aim. So what are we aiming? Well, we already said it out loud. We want to aim our negative X at aim. Boop. Now you see nothing changed because we built this correctly so far. Now, what do we want? What else do we want? We want an up vector. This up vector is moving wherever red moves, but that gives us a good forward direction. So we can go back to basic and we can turn on up vector. Then we go to up vector, we have two settings we need. We need the up vector, which is y plus, which is correct, but we also need our axis, and that should be whatever our aim was. So our aim was negative x, so I'm going to say negative x. And now we drag in our up on that. Now visually, nothing should change. But what should happen with any luck here is when we hit play, actually, I just remembered one thing. We do need to rewind and tell this to also calculate really late. So I have to say generators and crank it to the full number. And it's physically later than the other two, so it will calculate after the other two. So now there shouldn't be a frame of lag on our plate. Let's go ahead and drag a normal material onto our plate here. And now the idea is this plate is going to be stuck onto our surface here, and it's going to be aiming wherever that does. Now you see there actually was a little twitch there when this kind of tilted suddenly from one side to the other. So we've got a couple of potential limitations there, but I'm going to temporarily turn off the visibility of both blue and red. And now we've got a plate which is sticking not just to that surface, but it's also kind of clamped to two different points here. Now our up vector aim there is definitely like a little bit twitchy. We could say that we could, potentially we could just grab this up. I could say, no, up, I want you to be on blue and not this other one. I can zero at the X and Z, and now it's directly above there. We got some random rotation. Yeah, these are spinning, which is a little bit of a pain, but we don't care about the spinning because we're aiming at two different points that are stuck onto the surface. So the aim on the blue is hopefully a little more solid. Not saying we could necessarily get some twisting on there, but that is also now locked onto those two separate points, giving us more of a direction. Now we could definitely start building more complex rigs. Like the most stable configuration would be a triangle where you could do 3 points and aim one at the next and the next at the next, and now you've kind of got this absolute flat triangle, which is a triangle is a way of representing an infinite plane. So yeah, that is, but this is now stuck there, and to whatever degree we want to push it in or out and bend it, we have pretty good control over that. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that overall. I mean, it does end up being twitchy, but it's only as twitchy as our points are on linked on there. So that's just by the nature of these soft bodies. So that's one methodology. I'm trying to think if there's any other obvious way of doing it. You can use springs. Springs have some limitations. I would be a little bit curious. What time is it? We're almost exactly at 4. So why don't we spend a few minutes on it, and then maybe I'll sneak in one extra question just for fun. What is the best? I think keeping this a rectangle is probably a good idea. So that is saved as that version. But let's go ahead and save it as a B, and then we'll call this one Springs. Springs. Now this one's going to be hopefully not too much more complicated setup. I'm going to delete all of the kind of existing rig stuff. This one, it might be a little harder to set up, but the advantage is that it would be dynamically connected, which would be a big advantage. In fact, I want this to be very precise in the way we're going to connect it. So I'm going to actually delete out that cube. I'm going to make a copy of our plane, delete the dynamics tag, make this editable, and we're going to very, very cleanly grab whatever we're going to connect. Let's say it's that. This is what is going to be our connection, okay? So I'm going to hit UI, invert, select all, D for extrude, create a cap, give it some thickness, select all. There we go, perfect. Looking good. And now we'll just change the color to blue. Okay, and this will be our, I guess I'll just say plate. And we need to start linking it. Now, the advantage of doing this extrude is all my points are pretty much perfectly lined up. We are going to make this dynamic. And let's see if we just say simulation rigid body. I just want to see if this kind of explodes or does anything bad. No, it's fine. It kind of might pop away from it a little bit, but let's see if we can get some springs working. We'll start with just one as well. So I'm going to go simulation. dynamics, spring. What is the spring going to link to? The spring is going to go in between these two. It is going to link the plane. And let's do this one right away. I want to link to the plane. What do I want to link to? I want to link to a polygon point. Now, we could do a point selection and make 4 selections, but I tend to just do it directly on the index. So I'm just going to start dragging this through, and we can see it traveling through all of our points. And now we can see that it's traveling around, and right there it is, point 205. And now let's also link it to our plate and do the same thing. I want to link it to a polygon point, and we just have to toggle through all of these until it is a perfect flat loop or completely disappears. Right there. Completely disappears. That means it's on the exact same position. It has a scale of 0. So that is a spring of no position. Cool. It has a rest length of set rest length 0. So that's another way of checking. Actually, I never thought about that. But if you hit set rest length and it's 0, then that means they are indeed in the same spot. So we can just call this spring 1. Let's go and make a copy, and let's just make all 4 at the same time. Why not? So spring 2, I'm going to start ticking through, and I can see that is now on the next one. And now I can start ticking through on the other one, which I think I have to go down, down, down. There we go. Back to 0. Nice. So now we make spring 3. This is going nice and quick. I thought it would take longer. So let's start here. Let's start increasing our index. It's going to have to loop around a few times. There we go. Now we're here. Tick. There we go. It's right on that one. And now we'll have to start. I don't know if we have to increase or decrease. I'm just going to start cycling through. Almost. Nope, not quite. There we go. 0 again. Set rest length. You see it's correct. One more. Spring 4. Spring 4. Increase, increase, increase. There we go. And increase, 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 increase. We might even cycle around all the way. We might loop all the way through the points and get back to the beginning. And that's fine. It just loops around. There we go. So it's 64. I imagine it's also potentially 0. Yeah, so it's also 0. 64 points on here or 0. So there we go. We got 4 springs, 4 connections, all set to 0. So I'm going to hit save, and let's just see what happens without changing any settings. Everything's default. We just have 4 springs. Hit play. You know what? Not too bad. That is sticking on there pretty well, but here's the advantage. It's also dynamic. So with this being dynamic, it's not passing through, and it's actually being pulled on all 4 points. So now let's start tinkering with this a little bit more. You see that our springs, they are definitely stretching, so we can start doing some additional things. We can add some spring stiffness. So I can set this to 10. I can't change the number while it's playing, so let's set that to 11. Let's hit play, and it's still stable. Now, what's kind of cool here is, depending on how well this works, this could also be pulling the points of the cloth to the object. So the two are actually in conjunction with each other. So if we push these too far, they will explode. But yeah, okay, so boom, explode. And in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell the plates dynamics. I'm going to say, don't worry about self-collisions. That's going to make it so even if it explodes, it doesn't slow us down too much. Actually, surprisingly, kind of. Oh, let's actually do it on the right object. Even if this explodes now, you see it's not slowing us down because it's the self-collisions that actually cause the slowdown. So now it's really strong, but it's so strong that's causing an explosion where they'll start freaking out. So don't want that. But even at that strength of 111, if we hit Control D and go to our dynamic settings, we might be able to crank up our steps per frame. So let's jump it up to 55, and that could work. Hit play, it falls down. He's getting all flappy in there, and then it's not self-colliding anymore, so that's being a little, the way it's overlapping is being a little weird, but the strength, it didn't explode, but you can definitely see we're getting some weird behavior. I'm going to go ahead and turn on self-collisions again, and we'll be careful here. So it's going to pull down. Yeah, man, there's almost like a gravitational force on that. I wonder if there's an influence. That is a thing. Damping. Yeah, see, region of influence? That could be trouble. Region of influence is how many points around it does it do something with. And it looks like it has a minimum of 1%. But let's see if this is any different. It's definitely different. Yeah, it's better. So now you can see we've got this incredible stiffness, and you see this cloth is being forced to practically be like on top of it. It does seem to be confusing the ones around it, but the only point here being is 111, maybe a little strong. Let's drop it to half the amount and hit play. And already a little bit more reasonable, and it's stuck there pretty dang well. It's probably stuck there well enough that we don't need 55 calculations every frame. So at 25, it seems to be doing just fine. Let's drop it to 15. We're at near real time now, and it seems to be sticking just fine. This methodology is working quite well. I'm quite pleased with it. And if you needed to, you could probably even make a couple additional points where you could connect all of the points to it, and it could just potentially be working. So yeah, there you go. Two different methodologies for connecting one thing to another. I mean, there are definitely limits. If this thing suddenly decided to move really quick, it's entirely possible to just explode and go flying away. And this region of influence, I do feel like there is some thing happening down here in this bottom one that's a little strange. And I wish we could make this region of influence 0 or even just 1 or like 0.1, but it seems like 1 is a minimum. We've also got our damping. I don't know if we need any damping. That's just sucking energy out from the system, but I don't think it's springy enough for that to be a variable. And then even the stiffness, like we crank the stiffness up, but this should be, the lower it is and it's still working, the better it's going to be for you. So if we drop this down to 25, then it's not pulling as strong. It's not going to be as twitchy. And I think it just calms everything down. So yeah, I think that's a fine setup. All right, I'm going to jump into the chat and see if there's any more questions. I do want to throw out here a couple things while I've got everybody, and then we're going to take one more question. So repost your links at the bottom. I will choose from the bottom again. Recapping a couple quick things. Tomorrow is a bonus live stream. The bonus live stream is for people who are supporting on Patreon at a particular level, at like $10 and above. The point being is on the bonus stream, what we're going to be doing is longer form projects. We voted on a project and we're going to be doing sand effects. We already did a week of exploration, and tomorrow is going to be more exploration. Eventually, I'm going to be trying to make like a little animation of some sort, and it might be multiple shots. It might be a tiny 5-second short film. Something small, but something cool and finally animated. We're playing with third-party renderers. We're playing with X particles, a bunch of different things. So if you want to come and hang out and see these projects kind of early on in every step of the way, then please go check out Patreon for that. And even just Patreon in general. The idea for Patreon is that for all the live streams and the upcoming tutorials, this is just helping me produce these things and keep them free for everybody. So even this bonus live stream tomorrow, if you can't be a part of it, then that's completely fine. And eventually the cool final animation will be out there. Any cool tutorials that come from it will be out there for free for everybody. But then there's also like the engineer level on Patreon. And you get all the scene files. Everything you've seen me save, you would get that file. You can dissect it, keep it for later. And personally, for me, the best way I learn is through reverse engineering. So those scene files would be incredibly valuable to me. So if you're watching on Twitch, you can just scroll down. You can see a button to Patreon. If you want to support, it's appreciated, but not necessary at all. It's just a cool, fun thing. And I super appreciate it. And then other news, I'm going to make a special button for it down below. But Crossfader put a link in the chat for Rocket Lasso Slack.com. When we have the next version of the website ready, it's going to be a community page. But for right now, go to RocketLassoSlack.com to continue the conversation. Bunch of helpful people in there hanging out on Slack, answering questions, just showing off projects. There's cool group project. There's going to be an upcoming chain project based around the Rocket Lasso logo, just because that's what people are asking for. A lot of fun stuff going on there. So that should be everything I want to mention here. So I'm going to jump back into the chat and tackle one more question. Motion process. Thanks, dude. Dim, thank you very much. Salam's got a link. I'm trying to see if there's anybody with a link that I haven't clicked on recently, but let's do Salam. Oh, and there's even somebody asked about this question earlier, so it's not even specifically your question, but thank you for keeping an eye out for people. Let's drag this on over into the proper window. So this is Pasha Ho. We've definitely tackled some of his stuff in the past. So either the same people online are making cool stuff that you guys are always interested in, or you need to start following more people on Instagram so we can start showcasing more varied artists. But let's just see what he's got going on here, because I'm sure it's cool again. Whoa. Wow. Okay, well, we've got a bunch of real... Okay. Oh, it's super interesting. Okay, now, if we scroll up here, we're going to see that he is probably going to use the word Python in here. Yes, he does indeed use the word Python. So there is a methodology for this kind of thing. We talked about something very similar to this last week, but the way he's applying it is completely different, and that's super interesting. I'm trying to think if there's any. There's not a quick way. First of all, he did do this in Python, so there is a level of like, okay, there's code that's driving the way this is subdividing. Now, I'm trying to think of like he did it with code, and last week we kind of faked it pretty well with a grid, and I was pretty happy with that. But this rig is significantly more complex in the way that he's letting it run. So let me, I don't even know if I have it on this computer. Let me do a quick search for a file. I should be able to find it somewhere on Dropbox. And let me just see if I'm going to search for the word grid maker. And this is something I coded a long time ago in Python, and it never got released. And I'd have to start stuff from conceptually from scratch again if I was ever going to do something with it. Oh, and it seems like I did find it. But I'm just going to talk through it a little bit. So let's see if this works. Oh, that's not what I thought it was at all. Okay, here it is. No, this has been made editable. That's not quite it either. Let me check the enclosing folder. How do I open up the folder it's in? Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm not sure how to open up the enclosing folder. But let's go in there. Grid maker. There we go. Okay, here we go. So this is what I wanted to show you. So now, first of all, there is lots of code to make this happen. So not a trivial thing. But conceptually, what is happening is there's a bunch of space here, and it's getting subdivided a bunch of times. So if I were to, this one is three-dimensional, but if I were to make it very thin, then you can kind of conceptually see what's happening. And what's happening is as there's additional cuts being made, it is subdividing the cuts in different ways, and now you can see it's always eating up that same space. So you can see already here a similarity between the way these are being formed. And if I were to change my random offset here, you can see things moving around. Now, this is not the same code, is not the same kind of conceptual thing that was built in Pasha's animation. But if I, instead of having this just be pure randomness, if I had a noise driving these, then these different segments could be blobbing up and down, having different thicknesses. So the only thing I can do right here is show you different random seeds, and you can see how they're moving around. But then you just imagine that the code is returning like a start and end point on everything, and then you could use those to drive things. So the width of this is what is being driving the width of the pencil. It's determining the head here. And then the height is just taking whatever that extra space is and stretching the bottom out to match it, is conceptually what's going on. Now, we don't have any way of essentially making this type of motion in vanilla Cinema 4D. In no way can I think of a way of having a series of planes with offsetting things without us going deep into Espresso. We would need like a bunch of segments being determined. So I just cannot conceptually think of a way to do this outside of code, outside of what we did last week. And we'll pop that open real quick just because it was interesting. So in the scene files from last week, we had these techno screens, and if you look at the way that these are going to be kind of moving, and you can kind of see like how we're faking it, like you can see how it's kind of like we've got a vertical series and a horizontal variable, and as these are independently scaling up and down, dynamics is wanting them to fall in. And if you weren't here last week, there's wind blowing them left and down and backwards, so they're kind of being trapped in the corner of a big box. And you can kind of see the way that they're piling up. So conceptually, this is the only other way I can think of doing something kind of like this. So potentially, if you did like all the dynamics in a very particular way, you might be able to get a stack of things going in this kind of concept. But it'd be starting to get so specific. And once again, like last week, we had to build this entire elaborate rig to make it work. What we'd have to do here would be, and then even that, like, I guess we could build a rig, but it's like if we were to make a block here, and let's see if we can I just want to make sure that they're not going to fall in the corner. If I do that, and we were to make this just regular dynamic, you're going to see rigid body. This is just going to fall backwards and into the corner. So if we were to make this randomly scaling left and right and up and down, and we could do that with Grayscale Gorilla's plugin Signal. So I could drive the size here, and I could be randomly adding a noise. Then I can say I want to randomly change on Y, and I want to randomly change on Z. And then X, I want it to not change at all, so I'll do 0. So now you can see that these are going to be stretching up and down and doing stuff. And we'd probably want to slow it down, 0.25 speed. And then you can see it's now changing height and width. So that is all good. But what we'd have to do is make a stack of these. So copy and paste and put one above. And I have to do this very precisely on Y. Now I could, I can go and make this one a different height. I could say the base height of this one can be a smaller, and I could copy and paste this top one, this bottom one, and move it up. So you see we got a stack of 3, and now all 3 of these, let's turn on subdivision so we can, or our NB, so we can see our edges. So now you can see we've got one box in the corner, one box there, one box there. And I can even go and change the, I can't change the, right, okay. This is where it starts getting complicated. If I hit play, these are uniformly, in their own relative way, scaling up on Y and down on Z, and all the gravity is forcing them to go. So we could build potentially, if we made a rig like a pencil or a pen or a Wacom pen that was stretching to match these scales, then this would be a rig that could do it in vanilla cinema. We'd have to be copying and pasting again and again and again and again. So that'd be neat. And even here you can see that these are not perfectly staying on each other because we are relying on dynamics to force them down. So we'd have to like crank these winds even higher. But you know, as soon as we do that, we start getting like twitchiness. So you can see we get like these little twitches. So there's a push and pull on that. But you can see how these would stack. And then we'd have to put different random seed. We'd have to do one randomness on X, so one signal tag potentially. There's other ways. You could just use noise and espresso, but it'd be very manual to do. But if they all, this entire stack would have to have the same X, the same horizontal, but then you have all different random seeds on Y, and then you would make a different copy. I'm going to copy and paste the entire stack over here, and now they're in the same order. I guess, okay, in order to visually differentiate, I'm just going to make an extra copy of this one. So there's 2 there, so at least they're different. So now these 4 would all get the same different seed. So they do have a different seed, and now they'll all stack up there. So you can see these are all doing, well, we've lost that one, but these are all doing the same thing. So they have the same Z, and they have different Y than that one. So you can see how we could kind of dynamically build that. That is not how that was done. Pasha's was made with code, but you can kind of conceptually see how this concept might work. I'll go ahead and save this one in the new file because it's neat. Of course, you won't be able to really open up the file and play with it unless you have Grayscale Gorilla Signal, but I do love that plugin. So if you don't have it, you should have it. So we'll just make this number 7. And we'll see if there's a quickie question, because I didn't really get to answer that one. I just kind of got to talk through it conceptually. Stacking boxes dynamically. I guess it's just dynamic. Back to the chat. Hey, everybody. That's the link from last week. Yep, that was great. Yadaglow saying, make a banana. You know what? That's not a terrible idea. We can model a banana really quick because you saw the reference here when we started. We had this fruit morph, and I did make this banana, and it's really fun to do this kind of thing. So let's just even see if we can sort of make, we'll use this one as a visual reference because I was looking at a bunch of photos of banana. I might even, there's always bananas in the house, so I probably just using one as a visual reference. But let's go ahead and see if we can model up one. I'm going to copy this, close the file, open up a new file, paste this in. This is purely going to be a reference off to the side, but keep in mind what I said about the initial model. Now, I'm pretty sure when I had modeled the first one here, I had started with an apple. I just thought I knew I could, if I had the apple, I knew I could morph the apple into a banana. But I wasn't sure if I made a banana, I could morph it into the apple. So I started with what I thought was the most difficult. But here we're just starting with a banana. But let's still treat it like we were going to be morphing it here. A couple things we could do. First of all, if we wanted to get a round shape, and I don't know how many segments around, so we're probably not going to be identical here. But let's go and make this like 5 by 5 by 5. So we've got an odd number here, and then I could go and make a spherical deformer, which is there. Spherify, drop that in, and I crank that up. And now you can see, boom, we've got a nice sphere, very even. Now, I think one of the preset spheres actually comes pretty close to this. Let's find out. If I go here, if we change this to a hexahedron, I think, yeah, you can see it's actually practically identical. But conceptually, you can even see how this might have gotten coded. Yeah, there we go. If I do this, it's almost the same, but can we get an odd number? Yeah, we're okay, right there. That's the same shape. So, but even that, I feel like that's not as spherical as that one is. It feels a little squished. But regardless, we've got our shape here. I can just right click and say current state to object. Now we are going to be adding some extra polygons on here. I'm not going to be shy about that, but that seems to be working okay. So the first thing I would do is, obviously our overall shape is taller, so it's T for scale. And actually, let's not even do T for scale. I want the top part to be relatively flat. So I'm going to do a loop here. And let's do UF, and we'll grab that and hit E for move. I'm going to move up, and I'm just eyeballing this. So, and I'm going to grow my selection. E for up, grow again. E, grow. Make sure I grab the Y. Stretch it up, grow. Stretch it up. And now you can see how we're stretching out, but we maintained this rounder shape on the bottom here. Now that we've done, I just increased the speed of my mouse. I grab this bottom one, grow. I don't want those ones in the corner, but this one, maybe I'd pull that down a little bit further. And then you see, and then you can even see that. Look, I don't remember how I modeled this one specifically, but you can already see this one little shape emerge right there. So that's a very similar shape. And now we could grab this bottom one, pull that down, and then you can see we're getting pretty good curvature here for the overall shape. Now, it does look like that the overall banana would be skinnier here, so I'm going to hit T for scale, not turn off Y, and I can just scale that in. Grow my selection, scale that in, grow my selection, scale that in. There we go, a little bit more of a uniform shape overall. And then let's do the same thing up here. Grow the selection, don't want that or that or that or that. Pull it up, shrink, pull it up. And there we go. Got a basic little kind of corn on the cob. We could morph in the corn as well. Now, actually, that I don't want to go too far there because you see the way the banana is shaped there, it actually scales down. Now, right there is, we could potentially have a couple extra slices in here, more subdivisions. You can see that this one definitely has more subdivisions in the base. This is more of a low poly one. But here I could go T for scale this up. Turn Y back on. T for scale it up, move it back down again. And I can hit I for inner extrude. Let's inner extrude that a little bit and pull it up a little bit. And I hit D for extrude, and we'll pull that up a little bit. T for scale, go down a little. D for extrude, we'll extrude that up. T for scale it out a little bit. D for extrude, go up just that little bit. And then probably an I, we'll pull that in and pull it down a little bit. So there we go. We kind of get this very basic version of the overall shape. And we might need some extra subdivisions. In fact, I'd probably be inclined to do an extra cut in here. So grab that UB, MF, one cut, turn off n-gons. You see I get a nice cut right through the middle. UL, T for scale that down, just make it a little bit more of a curve traveling through. It's looking fine. I think we'd probably need to kind of scale this entire thing up vertically a little more. So T for scale the whole thing up. And that's working pretty well. And now I would not be shy about using a bend deformer to get some of this curvature in. Let's go ahead and drop a bend in, and I'm going to say unlimited. And now if we start bending it, and let's go ahead and change our angle to 90. So now we didn't even have to scale it to match the overall shape. And you can see we can start bending this in, and we get a little bit of a nice overall curve. But most bananas don't have like a straightforward curve on the entire thing. So we'll make a second bend. In fact, the second one will calculate before the first one. And I'm going to say it's not unlimited. Let's just go limited. And now I can take this one and pull it up further. And as this one bends, we might want to stretch it up taller. And keep in mind, it's almost like this first one isn't happening yet. So this one is just doing whatever's happening up here. So this one, we can increase the strength here and bend that. And if we wanted to, we could even stretch it up taller still and pull it up. So it's only bending the top half of this banana. But now it's going to bend the stem as well. And now when we use the second bend, it's going to bend everything. And that top part is essentially getting double bent. And then we could just keep layering those up and up. I can add a second one up there. And let's make it nowhere near as tall, so it's going to be way skinny. And keep in mind, this one is, once again, calculating first. So I can move it up, and then it's like, where do I want the extra bend to go? So it's like, okay, maybe something a little sharper right there would work. And then I could, might be a good idea to say keep Y length here, so it's not going to keep stretching the banana out. So I can stretch it there, bend that. And then this one, and even these, maybe keep Y length. Maybe keep Y length. And yeah, it's stretching it less. I don't know, some of those I actually kind of liked it bending. And, you know, there's nothing is right everything, nothing here is right or wrong unless you think it looks good. So I think this one should bend maybe a little bit less, but yeah, you get that kind of a sharp turn in there. Pull this down. Yeah, there we go. I kind of like that crook a little bit sharper. And yeah, now I got all of those. I could just right click and go current state to object. I would probably keep the previous one here so I could go back to his reference. Keep that up top. What I typically do when I'm modeling something is actually just make a null. I just pull it down here and I hide the null. And as I kind of do those current state to objects, I just drop it as a child there so I don't have to keep on turning off the dots and they just kind of live in this dead folder. And then we just keep going further and further, getting more and more segments on this banana. And at this point, it'd just be kind of like, hey, what doesn't have enough detail, or what is, just not quite right. Like here, this curvature, I don't like that too much. I grab that polygon, grow, R for rotate, spin, grow, R for rotate, T for scale the overall thing bigger, grow, R for rotate, spin it a little, E for move, scoot this down, keep the curve going. And it's just a little bit of cleanup overall here. That's all working pretty well. This geometry here looks a little sharp. It's not necessarily wrong, but I could grab those and hit MG for iron and just let those smooth themselves out a little bit. And at this point, it's like, okay, this seems like about as far as I can go without checking it in a subdivision surface. There's still certain things. I could grab these polygons. Let's pull those out, make that a little bit more square right there. Yeah, it's still pretty skinny, so pull that up. Yeah. Grab that middle one, grow, scoot. Yeah, so stuff like that. Anyway, here you see that curvature is continuing, but over there on the original reference, like it clearly wasn't bent that much. So when we were bending those, maybe we should have been counter bending them back a little, honestly. So I can go up, R for rotate, grow, pull it up. So yeah, that's just kind of that. Now we make a subdivision surface. We throw the whole thing in there and see what the overall shape is looking like. You know what? That's not too bad. That's not too bad considering we weren't looking at it at all in that capacity. Now, an important feature on a banana is that you get some areas of sharpness, although we are sort of getting those already. Do you see how we are, because it was maintaining a slightly boxier shape? There's not a curvature here that I would think. So essentially you see how we're getting almost like this slightly harder edge, and bananas kind of have like, I don't know how many, like 5, 6, 7 of these little extra hard segments. Now we could emphasize one of those or pull them out more by grabbing those edges. I could grab, actually let's hit, what is it, UM? Yeah, UM is the path selection tool. So I could go and trace along that edge on the banana. And then now we have to be very careful about moving this. But if we just move that back and out a little bit, then we're going to really emphasize that curve right there, that sharp part. And now let's just say we wanted to add one right down here in the middle stripe of the banana. We can go and hit UM. Now, we don't actually have a subdivision right down the middle, so that's actually a limitation. And we could subdivide the entire model one time and now get that. Let's go ahead and just drag a path through there. And now we'd have to grab this and just pull it down and out a little bit. Maybe T for scale and scale it down a little bit. But now you see how, do you see how we've now got that little stripe traveling down there? We haven't added any extra geometry, but we are adding in these extra little banana type subdivisions in there. But then let's say we didn't want that. Let's say this one is, let's say we wanted one here. Let's say we were going to put one here and we we're going to put one also here. But that means this one is getting in the way. So what we could do is grab that one and start smoothing it out more. MG for smooth. And let that smooth itself out. Grow the selection one. Smooth it out a little more, but not as much. And that's what I tend to do is grow my selection, smooth like half the amount I did the time before. But now if I scroll around, we kind of look at this highlight. Look at that highlight is not there. Actually, it did a pretty good job. It did better than I thought it would. That highlight is now no longer there the way it had been. So now we are free to go hit UM and grab whatever we actually want the little standout section to be. So E for move again. Let's scoot that entire thing out. And you see, I don't move very far. Just move that little bit. And here I'd probably hit T for scale and scale it out a little bit more. Just a little bit to maintain the overall radius. And now with any luck, yeah, now you get that lump right there. So it worked exactly the way I was hoping it would. So even with this banana is lower poly than even that one, and we are able to do a pretty dang good job of bending that out. And that's pretty good, that considering that that banana started out as a cube. So I am going to wrap this one up right there. Let's go ahead and give this one a quick save as just that banana right there. And let's name this number 1. Oh, I guess I shouldn't have deleted that null. The null can stay. Number 8. Modeling a banana. Banana. Cool. Okay, that was fun. That was a good question. Thank you, Yada. So everybody, that was fun. Oh yeah, and then also Andrew mentions that we could play with subdivision weight as well, and we were doing that in the second question of today. So that could also be applied to pull that in. In the case when I modeled those different fruits, it was to morph them between each other, and I don't know if you can morph the subdivision weight at the same time. So that would be a reason not to do that. But definitely that's a variable you could go. Sphere Factory. We'll save that one for next week. He's asking about peeling the banana off there. Hit me separately on that. We'll see if maybe there's something to tackle. And we could continue off of this one since we have 2 different banana models now. Let's see. Sphere Factory. I'm also agree that the tip here is a little bit sharp. Maybe we could have sharpened that up a little bit, especially by grabbing this and like pulling a little bit closer to a corner, perhaps, or pulling the entire thing further in, or maybe the overall shape on the tip there just needs to be like pinched in more, so you get a sharper angle. So there's a lot of different things to like vary that up. I actually like that less, but yeah, there's definitely a million tweaks to go in there. But that's as far as I'm going to go on that. Wait, I guess I was just showing that without flipping the screen. But yeah, it still looks like that. Leo is asking if there'd be a way of doing, essentially, would there be a way of linking to a project? So instead of asking a question, because right now people are typing out a question or linking to like an Instagram or something inspirational they saw on Twitter. But Leo's asking if it'd be possible to ask a question via like a scene file. I guess that is potentially possible, but that's dangerous because it's dangerous because I just don't know what's going to be sent, and a lot of people don't prepare files very well. Because I've done years and years and years of tech support, and oftentimes people will send a file, but they won't attach the images, or they'll send it with a gig of baked material or baked animation on it, or there's missing plugins is a huge one where it's like, oh, they used Octane, but I don't have Octane, so I can't do anything with the file. Octane just keeps yelling again and again and again that you don't have it. It takes forever to do it. So while I want to say that that's possible, it does seem like an avenue where there's a lot of danger. A lot of things could get messed up via that route. So for right now, I'm thinking probably not. But as it is being pointed out by Pro Tools, jump into the Rocket Lasso Slack, and that's the perfect place for everybody to help answer questions. And then even potentially that'd be a good place where it's like, hey, this would become, I don't know, I don't want to make anything official, but it could go in there. It's like, hey, this should be a question for Rocket Lasso Live. So via going to the Slack, it can be put in there, people can look at it, and it can get verified as like, okay, this is clean, it's ready to be sent out. Really, when you're sending a question on that kind of level, you should strip out everything that isn't relevant to the question so that they can work from the purest, cleanest, simplest form. If I open up a file and there's 100 different objects, but you only have a question about one little tiny one, the first thing I'm going to do is copy and paste that object out of that file into a new one. So that would be something there. But yes, there's the link again in the Rocket Lasso Slack. And be sure to go and hang out there. People are really great at answering questions and hanging out there, and I'm in there too. So yeah, we got a lot of people hanging out in the chat here. Everybody had really great questions. Does everybody who is still here, do you like, I personally do like a mix, but I think we've been lacking at doing kind of these rapid fire ones, and there's a big advantage, I think, to doing these rapid fire ones. Where it's like, let's just do this tiny little part of a question, and then this time we answered like 6 or 7 different questions instead of just doing one question. And sometimes doing the one question is fun, but sometimes doing a bunch of little ones is more fun. But yeah, I was actually chatting with Lucas a little bit about this last week, where if somebody's, a lot of people are like at lunch right now, or they're watching while they're working. And if I'm doing a 2 hour long project, it's kind of hard to follow along if you're not in the mode to do that. But if I'm doing some quick modeling thing in 10 minutes, that's pretty easy to pay attention to. So I do like this. And we'll be doing this style a lot more. We'll be making sure there's a very healthy mix of doing the more rapid fire ones for sure. But in any case, I believe that this is going to officially wrap it up. Thanks again, everybody, for jumping in here and asking the questions. Couldn't do it without you. We even got to do 2 just written questions. That's really fun. I'm excited about that. Once again, check out the Patreon below if you're on Twitch. Helping out there, it helps me out a whole bunch, keeps it so I can do these more often. And that will officially wrap this one up. Thank you, everybody, and I'm going to officially go now. Bye-bye. See you on the Slack channel. Bye, 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 bye.